Dance. To speak or submit a written comment, please complete a comment card for each item and submit to the city clerk prior to the public comment portion of the item. I'll now call the meeting to order, and I'm going to defer to Cub Scout Pack 227 to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Attention! Will the audience please rise? Color Guard advance. Hand salute. Those not in uniform, please put your right hand over your heart. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and for all. Color Guard, post the colors. Color Guard salute. 2. Color Guard dismissed. The audience may be seated.
I want to thank Cub Scout Pack 227 for that great ceremony. Big round of applause. Awesome. Now going to defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Good evening. Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Here.
Councilmember Wolf.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Here.
Mayor Anstead.
Here.
Mayor Anstead, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. There was no closed session held tonight, so there's no report from the closed session. We'll now move into the approval of the agenda. Will the maker of the motion and a second to approve the agenda please state your names?
Councilmember Sylvester moves to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mayor Pro Tem seconds the motion.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. There are no presentations this evening, but we're going to move right into intergovernmental special purpose committee and departmental reports, and I'm going to defer to Councilmember Lopez for a Clean Power Alliance update.
Thank you. I don't usually give Clean Power Alliance updates, but I figured we've hit a milestone with the energy company that we are a part of as the city of Agoura Hills, along with over 30 other entities, cities and counties in procuring clean energy. So I've been serving on the board since 2018. I'm an executive board member and a legislative chair. And so I've seen over the past 5 years that it's really been, you know, so many ups and downs, particularly with the energy industry, the financing, the legislation, the science. It's so confusing and volatile. And so I've seen our new company struggle greatly. We've had some pretty dire meetings over the past 5 years that we've had to go through to protect our ratepayers and all of that. So I just wanted to share that our last meeting was just such a different tone and note that I wanted to share it with you all. First of all, we have worked very hard and we finally received an A- credit rating, which is a huge financial feat for us because, you know, the energy market, there's so much hedging that you need to do, and so to be able to borrow and move money around with better credit rating is just huge for us. And then I also wanted to share, this is really exciting, that last week our board approved a power purchase agreement with SunZia Wind Project, and I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is the largest wind project in the nation, and it's historic in the amount of energy that is generating. It's in New Mexico, transported to Arizona before it gets to California. But just to give you a scope of how huge this is, it is 50% greater than the Hoover Dam. It's massive. And Clean Power Alliance is an anchor purchaser, meaning like we're one of the You know, the larger purchasers were purchasing 575 megawatts, and it's enough to power 250,000 homes annually. At their groundbreaking, they had the Secretary of the Interior there, the Vice President. So I encourage you to Google it. It's Sunzia, S-U-N-Z-I-A, wind project. It is historic, and I'm just so proud that, you know, Clean Power Alliance and by extension us, we are a part of this massive energy project that's going to bring clean energy to California. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that update. We appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, can I just add that I want to say that thank you, Councilmember Klein Lopez, for being on that board, because I've heard from all the other councils that it's just, you know, the meetings take hours and it's complicated and it's involved, and of course it all hit, you know, during COVID and having to do it remotely. And so thank you for your service for the city of Agoura Hills. I feel like we're in really good hands, and we
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. So
Thanks for saying that.
keep up the great work.
Okay.
Any other reports from staff or city council? That's both at the same time. All right, thank you. We'll now move into public comments. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Persons addressing the council shall not engage in disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. We did receive one written public comment from Zoe Eisenstein in Agoura Hills, and that was distributed to council prior to the meeting and posted to the website. It will be included as part of the record. We do not have any speaker cards.
Thank you. We'll now move to the consent calendar. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the city council on the consent calendar? No? Okay. I will now call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mayor Pro Tem Elise Buckley Weber.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you very much. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval, 5-0.
Thank you very much. And I do want to make, and I made sure I can do this, is I want to make a comment concerning what the clerk mentioned, that we had a comment from Zoe Eisenstein on number 3, which was the Hawk system for the crosswalk that we just approved. And I want to, first of all, from the mayor, I want to just thank Zoe for being very involved in her community and the Girl Scouts. And this was a project that she worked on with our city staff. And I just want to really commend Zoe for working on this project. And I actually met many of the Girl Scouts actually last night when we were honoring veterans. But I want to just mention her activism in the community and thank her truly from all of us. So thank you very much, Zoe. So now we'll move on to ordinance. Our next item is a discussion to waive full reading and introduce ordinance number 22-474, adding Chapter 12 to Article 2 of the Agoura Hills Municipal Code, and approve an agreement for consultant services. I will now defer to the City Clerk, Kimberly Rodriguez, for the staff presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. The request before you tonight is to introduce an ordinance and approve an agreement for consultant services related to the electronic filing of campaign disclosure statements. In 2017, the city purchased an electronic subscription with NetFile for the paperless filing of Form 700s. With the success of the system and to provide a more efficient process for campaign disclosure statement filings, The City Clerk's office has negotiated with NetFile to accommodate online filing to include any forms meeting the requirements of the Secretary of State. Those would be Forms 410, 460, 470, et cetera, thus making campaign filings with the city, including Form 700s, electronic and accessible. As in the past, the city's electronic fill-in forms required by the city's campaign reform ordinance 10, 20, 30, et cetera, will continue to be provided to the candidates to complete and submit by email to the City Clerk's office. Upon receipt, each form will be redacted and scanned into the system and be available for review on the portal. Government Code Section 84615 allows for local government agencies to require an elected or appointed official, candidate, or committee to file FPPC campaign statements, reports, or other documents electronically through the adoption of an ordinance. In order for the city to accept electronically filed campaign disclosure statements, the City Council must adopt an ordinance approving the use of an online or electronic filing system, which shall include the legislative finding that the online or electronic system will operate securely and effectively, be at no cost to filers, and be available to the public to view the filings. Effective January 1st, 2021, Assembly Bill 2151 requires campaign disclosure statements to be redacted for privacy and posted to the city's website within 72 hours of the filing deadline. To meet compliance, the City Clerk's office has manually redacted, scanned, and posted each paper filing. Once installed, the NetFile software will assume this role and automatically redact and post all electronic statements to the city's website upon filing. NetFile is a premier hosted solution for electronic filing and administration for campaign disclosure statements and Form 700s in California, serving local governments for over 24 years. In terms of security, the system is a web-based, vendor-hosted application that utilizes industry best practices for securing data using the same data encryption for online filings that is used by banks for online banking. Implementation of the NetFile campaign module will promote transparency and provide convenience for committees, individuals, and the public. The system provides 24-hour filing and viewing accessibility of campaign finance information from any computer. The database system will provide multiple prompts to the filer to ensure timely filing, increase the accuracy of filed campaign statements, ensure data is placed on the correct schedules, and store previous statements and donor information for user ease when completing subsequent filings. NetFile also provides training at no additional cost and will offer extensive training to all filers. Staff anticipates the software will be in place this January to meet any semi-annual statement filings for the current council and for the city council candidates to use in the upcoming 2024 election cycle. The proposed ordinance and agreement have been reviewed by the city attorney and approved as to form. There's no additional fiscal impact to the city council budget, as funds were appropriated for this service in the city clerk's department. Staff recommends the city council, 1, waive full reading and introduce ordinance number 23-474, and 2, approve an agreement for consultant services with NetFile, authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement. This concludes my report. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Before we move to public comment, does any council member have questions of staff on the presentation? No? All right. We'll move on. This section is reserved for public comment. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
All right, just double back, make sure no council members have any comments before we move into deliberations. All right, if we want to move into deliberations, I'll move right to Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a win-win for everybody as far as I'm concerned. It's a win-win for those of us who are filers because it's just been, you know, it's bringing us well into the 21st century, thank goodness. And for the residents and for anybody who wants to actually look at it, it's really nice that they can just go on the computer wherever they are and they can look and they can see who's donated money to us and they can see everything else. So I'm 100% for it. I say I couldn't have come too soon, and it'll be much easier for future candidates and future city council members. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Councilmember Sylvester.
I second what my fellow Mayor Pro Tem said. And I would like to thank Kimberly for keeping us all in line. This is a really easy system to use, and it gives everyone, full knowledge of what we're up to. So I think it's wonderful.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
I think this has been something that's been needed, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with this. I can make all the findings.
Councilmember Lopez.
I just want to echo my fellow council members, especially the part about Kimberly Rodriguez being, an invaluable asset to us. It's not easy to file these forms. They're very overwhelming. They're very, specific, the way the state and needs these forms to be filled out. And so in addition to saving us some headaches, I'm really hoping it will save you a lot of time as well, because you spend so much time on these reports. And so, as Mayor Pro Tem said, it's win-win. And I just want to thank you again for always being at the forefront of helping us out with this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And my comments are ditto, basically. I mean, Kimberly, I couldn't ask for more or better help whenever I'm trying to complete those forms. And I know I appreciate all the hard work that you do in helping us. And so hopefully we'll be able to do a little easier once we go on, but I'm not so sure. We'll see how it goes, but thank you. And I can make the findings and ready to move forward. So I'll now call, well, first I'll ask, is there any other comments before we move for a vote? Okay. I'll now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Deborah Klein Lopez, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Sylvester seconds.
Thank you very much. Now I'll defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 9 on the discussion. Our next item is to conduct a pre-screen review of an application proposing to amend Chapter 1, Introduction, Chapter 3, Commercial Districts, and Chapter 5, Overlay Districts of Article 9, Zoning of the Agoura Hills Municipal Code. I will now defer to the Community Development Director, Denise Thomas, for the staff presentation. And before you start, Denise, I have to wish you happy birthday, and I'm sure others will as well, but happy birthday, Denise. You got it.
Thank you.
You got it.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. We are presenting to you this evening a request by a property owner to make an amendment to the municipal code to allow a use that they would like to have on their property. The applicant is in the audience, and they'll be available at the end of the staff presentation to answer whatever questions you may have. And at this time, I will defer to Katrina Garcia, our Associate Planner, to present the item to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, and good evening, Mayor and honorable council members. As Denise mentioned, the item before you tonight is for a pre-screen review of a zoning ordinance amendment. So tonight I'll be covering the purpose of the amendments and why the proposed change was initiated, a quick summary of what the changes are, and the specifics of the modified language and staff's recommendation. The purpose of the proposed amendments was initiated by the property owner's interest in developing a vacant lot to be used to store collector vehicles. The vacant lot is located immediately north of the 101 freeway and south of Canwood Street, and located in the commercial retail service zone and within the freeway corridor overlay district. In evaluating the proposed use against the code, staff found that the zoning ordinance would not allow the use in the CRS and the FC zone. First, the specific use is not explicitly listed in the commercial use table. It is similar to antique auto storage, which is a listed and permitted use in the CRS zone. However, the code doesn't define antique, but it's inferred that the vehicles would need to be of substantial age, which would then restrict the type and age of the vehicles proposed to be stored. Second, the freeway corridor prohibits many storage facilities and yards and the like. The phrase "and the like" is interpreted to include other storage uses which is defined in the code to be the use of land or structures for the accumulation or holding of goods, merchandise, equipment, or material, except that junk shall be excluded from the definition. The lack of a concise use that would be allowed in both the CRS and FC zones prompted the applicant to propose the following changes. First, they create a new use, private garage collector motor vehicle. The code already defines private garage, but they would also propose to define collector motor vehicle. The new use would also include footnotes that would place limitations and provisions on the use. The language in the CRS development standards and the FC overlay standards would also be modified to create exemptions for the use. It's also worth noting that all the proposed changes would apply to all CRS and FC zones in the city. The next 3 slides will demonstrate what the changes are verbatim. First change would be in section 9120.3 of the code, which would include collector motor vehicle as a new defined term and will be defined as a motor vehicle owned by an enthusiast who collects, purchases, and/or acquires for their own use in order to preserve and maintain the vehicle for hobby and/or historical purposes. Second change would include the commercial use table in section 9312.2, and it'll reflect the new use and will only be allowed in the CRS zone, subject to the special conditions listed in the matrix, which is G, G, and K. Third change would be a special condition, which is GG, and is proposed to read, permitted if the entire operation, including parking and storage of vehicles, including vehicle parts in connection with the operation, is conducted within a completely enclosed building. The fourth change includes, since the principal use is a private garage for collector motor vehicles, the CRS development standards on warehousing and storing limitations would be modified to include language that would explicitly exempt private garage collector motor vehicles from being limited to the 50% maximum for storage and warehousing. Last change, the freeway corridor explicitly lists prohibited uses within the overlay. Because of that, language in the freeway corridor overlay would be modified to include an exception for private garages for collector motor vehicles. And just to clarify, this is done with the intention to allow the use in the freeway corridor. So with that, staff requests the City Council provide non-binding comments and direction to the applicant regarding this request for a pre-screen review of a zoning ordinance amendment. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is available as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to the applicant's presentation, does any council member have any questions of the staff? Sure, Mayor Pro Tem.
I may or may not have a question for staff, but the language that's being proposed, is that proposed by the applicant or is that proposed by staff?
It's proposed by the applicant.
Thank you.
I think I might have one question. The CRS, because I don't remember in the write-up where the other CRS zones are located.
We'd have to pull up a zoning map, but most of those are located along the freeway corridor.
Okay, so what is the difference between a CRS zone and the FC zone, the freeway corridor zone?
The CRS zone is an underlying zone, and the freeway corridor is an overlay.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Staff? No? Okay. At this time, I'd like to call up the applicant. You and your representative will have 15 minutes total for your presentation. Please note that when the yellow light appears on the podium, you will have less than 1 minute to conclude your presentation, but look forward to hearing the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead, and distinguished members of the council for allowing us the time.
Yep.
Sure. Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead, and distinguished members of the council for allowing us the time and consideration to present a proposed code amendment that will allow for the construction and operation of a quality project on the property located on Canwood in Agoura Hills. As an overview, we'd like to discuss the property's current use and zoning, what we think would be a great use on the property and the site, and a pathway with your guidance on how to achieve this project. Later, we'll have Corey Antilla, who has worked on many projects in the city of Agoura Hills, come up and kind of speak more of the technical aspects that they, FC, CR zoning, the amendments, and things of that nature. I would also like to say Bill Tucker would have liked to have been here. He's out. He highly respects all of you, so thank you for letting me take his place. And then I'd also like to thank Denise and staff for putting this all together and getting us to where we are. Happy birthday, Denise. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so this is to orientate everybody, this is, there's properties located on Canwood. You have the Canaan to the west. You have Chesborough to the east. You have Trader Joe's that is diagonally across. And this site is really perched on the freeway in a kind of a triangular shape on 2.5 acres, roughly 100,000 square feet, with several billboards on it. If we could go to the next slide. As you can see, there's 4 billboards. This photo, I think, highlights the unused nature of the site. The present use on the site is the 4 existing billboard signs. It may be interesting to know, and probably a lot of you know this property was part of Wizen before this freeway was constructed. When the freeway was constructed, it bifurcated the property. I believe the billboards went up shortly thereafter, and for many years they, I think before our time, marketed some of the tenants at Wizen. I want to note the one on the far east, which is kind of all the way to the left, we have a long-term commitment with that tenant. The rest of them, upon development, can go, but we have a long-term lease with that tenant. Let's see, if we go to the next, that would be great. If we could go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So this shows the 3 existing billboards. The 2 on the left show the same billboard, but different sides. And then next slide, please. And as staff indicated, the zoning is both in the CRS Commercial Retail Services Zone and the Freeway Corridor Overlay. And I think somebody asked for a map. Is this the right map, Corey? Yeah, so this kind of shows where CRS and some of the other zones are. If we could go to the next slide. So, as described in the zoning code, the CRS is oriented towards a diverse range of commercial, retail, and service uses. The code section also calls for a high level of architectural site design and quality. We understand this, and we believe we've achieved a design and site plan that meets the standard exceptionally well. And if we can go to the next slide. Well, it's kind of hard to see here, but the CRS zoning and kind of what has been highlighted, on this page, there's a lot of different auto uses. There's many uses that are allowed in this CRS zoning, but the one that we thought was most pertinent to what we were looking to do was auto storage / antique. And if we go to the next slide, that'd be great. And if you'll notice, on the previous slide, there was like a subsection which said J. And J talks about having the site completely enclosed, and which would be great for our uses as well, as we want it secure and aesthetically pleasing. Let's see, where are we here? Okay, if we could go to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, so my confusion for a second was the numbering of the slides was different than my numbers here, so I apologize. As discussed earlier, this site's also in the freeway corridor overlay district, and the overlay recognizes the importance of the corridor's land uses, architectural design, and appearance, giving the highly visible nature of the corridor and its reflection on the city's image. Therefore, development should reflect the quality, identity, and character of the community, very much in line with the purpose of both the CRS and FC zone. Obviously, the site's, pretty highly visible as you're coming down the corridor. Next slide, please. There are uses that are not allowed in the FC overlay, and we would want, in order to meet the high standards of the city, certain uses such as cabarets, a number of adult-related uses, outdoor displays for new car franchise dealerships, many storage facilities, yards, trucks, and equipment, and the like are prohibited in this overlay, which I think staff had mentioned. We believe the use that we're proposing does not specifically relate to any of these prohibited uses. And what I'd like to do now is kind of walk you through our proposed use. If you'd go to the next slide. What we would like to propose to have there would be privately owned garages for collectible motor vehicles. And if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of get into, this is kind of an example of what we would see the inside completely contained, seamless integration of security, environmentally controlled, and high-quality interior space, probably polished concrete floors, where collectors can securely keep, showcase, and appreciate their collectible vehicles. These are just some of the examples kind of within other private garages. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. And here is a rendering that we did, which we think represents something in the vein of what we would like to do, provided the city likes it as well. The vantage point of this rendering is from the Ventura Freeway heading southbound. The proposed design includes high-quality architecture, trees, landscape, articulation along the facade, overhangs to provide reduce the solar heat gained through the windows and garage doors. If we could go to the next one. This is similar, but this is more of a close-up. It's looking at the southwest corner of the project. Here you can further see some of the details of the high-quality architecture, trees, and landscape, balconies, and articulation of the facade. And if we could go to the next one. And then here is across the street from Canwood, a little bit down from the Trader Joe's. And this is the proposed privately owned development. This vantage of this rendering is of the northern site. And you can see, again, kind of the articulation of the project. I am going to have Corey come up and speak starting on the next slide, if we go to that. And this kind of gets into what staff was speaking with, some of the more technical aspects of the property. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. Good evening, Mayor Anstead and council members. I'd like to just summarize what we're proposing here is to try to make these code amendments. And one of the main code amendments that we're proposing is really just to help define what a collector motor vehicle is. We're also proposing that we add the privately owned garages for collector motor vehicles to the commercial use table, and then specifically exclude that from a limitation on the freeway corridor. If we can go to the next slide. The results of this would be adding privately owned garages for collector motor vehicles to the commercial use table. We would also include the conditions that we follow letter K, which would be provide a conditional use permit if this project was approved. And this project would require certain conditions like the storing of vehicles within a completely enclosed building. Next slide, please. Here we would like to propose an amendment to add the definition of collector motor vehicle, which is very much in line with the California Vehicle Code. Collector motor vehicle means a motor vehicle owned by an enthusiast who collects, purchases, and acquires for their own use in order to preserve and maintain the vehicle for hobby and historical purposes. Next slide, please. And then this would be the amendment. I think Katrina went through these more in the same amount of detail. This would be the amendment to exclude private garages for collector motor vehicles from the conditions and limitations of storing on the CRS zone. Next slide, please. And then again, excluding privately owned garages from the limitations or prohibited uses in the freeway corridor. Next slide. Next slide, please. And I'll let Anthony kind of speak on the next couple slides here.
I think this is just some of the things that this project would allow is the elimination of these billboards. If we could go to the next slide, please. And then also we believe that it would be a nice project within the city of Agoura Hills. We think it'd be very prolific. We think it's something that the city could be very proud of with very high quality design architecture. And then let's see the next slide. And then we just picked this gateway sign. I can't say maybe the sign, but we think there's an opportunity to put a really nice gateway sign with obviously the right design for the city of Agoura Hills, kind of as you're coming into Agoura Hills on the project, which would be very prolific. And then, yeah, so that's basically it. I would welcome love feedback, comments. I appreciate the time and staff and everybody taking their time to consider this project.
You got it. Stay right there. I'll ask my fellow council members if they have any questions to ask the applicant while he's still there. Councilmember Sylvester.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question for you. For the four billboards that we would like to see gone, if for some reason you cannot negotiate those, how will they fall into your design?
Well,
or have you already negotiated?
No, we have not negotiated those, but upon the development, those would go away. There's no way those would stay outside of the one on that far.
The Canyon Club one.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
To be specific, yes.
So they're definitely gone.
Yes.
Right. And then the other question I had for you. So basically, if those were for antique cars, they would be allowed, as our code currently states.
As I understand it, correct, Corey?
Yes. Is that right? So the only thing we're tweaking is to saying collectible cars as opposed to antique. Correct?
Yes, as I understand it, Corey may can speak to that better, but
these
yes.
are going to be individually owned.
Correct. They would be private condominiums for individual collectors.
And so once they're individually owned, how do we have control over what happens inside them?
I think it would be similar or analogous to if there was another, let's say, condo project and it was not let's say a car condominium, it was like an office condominium, or if it was a dental condominium, or if it was just a regular condominium, there'd be an HOA, there would be laws, and if those, and also the other thing, I believe that this would be a CUP, so there'd be conditions upon.
So they couldn't come in and then put something else in there, like an RV or.
No, and we would have a highly vested interest to make sure everything was to a very high standard. Right. Otherwise, that would.
But I'm just thinking down the road, when you have sold them all, then you have no more control, correct?
Correct. I believe that we could explore ways to make all of those, to get it to where we wouldn't have to ever worry about those type of issues. I think it's a legal thing that I can't necessarily speak on, but I'm sure we could do it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from other members? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So let me start with, and hopefully I can get through these pretty quickly. Your definition of collector motor vehicle. Now, you said that it was similar to the Vehicle Code of California. Is there a reason why you're not using the Vehicle Code definition?
I'm gonna look.
Which
Corey.
I looked up.
It's actually, this is Corey again. It's actually very similar to, it's actually almost verbatim in terms of that code. I think there were some things like they talked about, the vehicle code talked about parades and things like that. We don't want to tell people how to deal with their vehicles or their collectors, you know, that we're going to assign them up for parades to drive their vehicles around and show their vehicles around. So words like that, we took out. We just really talked about it's really for preservation and for them to cherish and to keep their vehicles
It's almost like
safely.
It's almost like a private individual museum you could think of.
Did you have a problem with the wording and is not used primarily for transportation, or you just wanted your own definition?
I think we just used our own definition.
Okay. And you use the word enthusiast instead of owned by a collector. Any reason why? Like when I first read it, I'm like, what's an enthusiast?
Yeah, I think that was part of the code, but we didn't want to say it's specifically a collector. It could just be someone who just, I mean, it's kind of one and the same. I don't know if there's a difference between the two, but that was just our rationale, just kind of debating it amongst ourselves of the difference between a collector and an enthusiast, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what an enthusiast is. Someone who's
Very enthused. Well, the only other thing I wanted to mention that I had forgotten to say, I think the other thing that would be great about this project, we believe it'd be very low impact from a traffic standpoint compared to like fast food, our hotel, our office, our residential.
That's why we didn't want to encourage a parade.
Well, it's only vehicles used for parades. It doesn't say it has to be on Canwood. With some, quite often through the proposed language, sometimes you call it and private garage, comma, collector motor vehicles, and other times you say and private garage for collector motor vehicles. I have a little bit of a concern about the private garage, comma, because that would mean any private garage can go up, right? So that along the freeway, maybe not in your project, but if we were to amend this and we could just have private garage, comma, that means anywhere along the freeway corridor or in the CRS zone, we could have a private garage, which basically is mini storage.
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree to your point.
Do you have a problem with changing it to and private garage for collector motor vehicles?
I don't see there's a problem.
Do you guys see the difference, what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think so. It makes sense.
So that the private garages that we would be allowing are limited for collector motor vehicles. And obviously, that has to go through legal review, but I'm just wondering.
That's the intent.
Okay. So let me go through here now. Okay. Some of the questions you've already answered. And this is probably more of a question for staff, but when I was looking at the, while you were showing the uses that can be used in the area, there's the letter J. What is J again?
I'm going to pull it up on Corey's slide because he has it on there.
Okay, great. There you go.
It was the part about it being enclosed.
Okay, so it's got, because I'm looking at the auto storage antique, like you mentioned, and J. Okay, so that means it's all enclosed, got it. And then the way I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that auto storage antique, as we sit here today, is only allowed in the BPM, is that right?
Denise Thomas, Community Development Director. That's correct.
Okay.
It's not permitted, and just to correct the record, he had said to Councilmember Sylvester that it would be permitted. It's not. It's storage, and the freeway corridor does not allow it, and neither does CRS. That's the purpose of the amendment.
That's the purpose of the, okay. That's what I heard too, so I just wanted to make sure. And then, of course, the language under private garage, it would be changed to private garage for collector motor vehicle, so I don't know if we need the GG, or whatever you want to call it.
You need the GG code.
I think the GG was just very specific to that use, not all storage.
Is GG private garage, or is GG private garage for?
It would be private garage for motor vehicles.
For collector motor?
For collector.
For collector, so it'd be private garage for collector. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. Okay, permitted if you, okay. And then, I noted all the ones where you had the comma, so I'm just going to, vehicle. There was something else that didn't make sense to me, so I just got to find it. Hang on, guys. It had to do with a prohibited use, and then it says, except for private garage for collector. But the placement of that language made me, when I read it, okay, yeah, it's prohibited uses, 9542.1A, and what you want added is facilities and yards except for private garages for collector motor vehicles. Then there's a comma, and it says truck and equipment rentals. And so I think it just needs some cleaning up, and I can't recommend that. It seems to me that you could have a private garage for collector motor vehicles, truck, and equipment rentals.
That's not the intent.
And so it just means moving the exception maybe to after truck and equipment. But other than that, I think that's the only questions that I have.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, Councilmember Wolf and I were on the subcommittee, so we had a lot of our questions answered, but maybe when it's time for deliberations, we can pipe in
Sounds
then.
good. No problem.
If you want me
got
to.
it, no problem. I just wanted to, one question that I had was concerning the rendering of what it would look like on the outside.
Okay.
Is your vision that this would be a two-story building, like on the bottom is where the vehicles are, obviously, and then the top would be like offices, or explain to me kind of?
It would be, I think, what, 25, 26?
Yeah.
25, 26, mainly it'd be one large story, and then there would be a mezz to come upstairs and kind of look down at the cars. That's generally how we've envisioned it.
So there's, the rendering that you had, I thought had like almost like a balcony out. Or
Yeah, that would be
windows of
from,
the
the mezzanine. That would be from the mezzanine space.
Okay.
And those would be kind of, I think, like a lounge space for
Yeah.
the guests to.
Exactly.
That would be facing the highway?
That would be facing the freeway, the 101, yeah.
Okay. I think that's, and it's 20, you said 20, your vision is 25 or 26?
We're meeting what the code limits are, including the freeway corridor. There's setback limitations and height limitation guidelines, so we're following that limit. But I think it's about 20. I think it's about 23 feet.
And you
total.
would stay within whatever the,
Absolutely.
okay. All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
Some additional questions about the billboards. So, and if you can just walk me through, because I remember this being a big deal 30, 40 years ago. But who owns the actual billboard infrastructure?
I believe CBS Viacom. And these are like very old, and I have not looked at them in many years, but they're very old leases that are myself and Bill would probably never sign today. Like they're just.
So when you say, I know you said there's one long-term contract, but the other three billboards, is the contract that Bill's company has with CBS, or is that who the contract is?
I believe so. CBS, Viacom, I believe so.
Okay.
And that was it's probably over years, there's probably mergers and different billboard companies, and CBS now, I believe, has the leasehold.
Okay, and you'd said something like they're short-term contracts? I mean,
No, meaning, I think they're like shorter contracts than what Bill or myself would sign today. Usually when we sign a lease, it's like 50 to 100 pages. And as I recall, when I looked at these were like 2 or 3 pages.
okay, so and the reason I'm asking is because if there's leases or contracts with the billboard companies, whoever that is, you wouldn't be able to remove the billboards.
I think upon a development, we are able to be clear.
Okay.
But we can't just willy-nilly, bye-bye, as I understand it.
Okay. That would be something that I would suggest that you look at closely.
Sure.
Okay. No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you. So if everything goes according to plan, what is the timeline for this? According to your plan, and the zoning is changed, when would, in theory, construction would be ideal construction site? Would this be like immediate?
We'd like to do it as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. That's one question. And the other question, and Denise, stop me if this is not the right channel for this, is regarding the monument sign. Is that something I can discuss right now, or would it?
You can discuss it.
Would the monument sign be something that we would be able to work in collaboration with you guys?
Sure, we'd love that.
And would the city be building it, or would you guys be building it?
I guess that could be in the CUP. We're open to it.
Okay, thank you. That answers all my questions. Thank you.
But, we'd like it to be something that everybody's proud of.
Now that I said I didn't have a question, I do have a question. But it's actually for our city manager, because it was my understanding when we discussed the billboard issue in subcommittee that the lease can be broken upon a development but they have to prove that the development can't proceed without the removal of that billboard. Is that right? Can you basically explain it the way you explained it to me? Because the burden is on them to show that they have to remove it for the development. Isn't that right?
Correct. I mean, because the agreement's between them and I believe it's CBS Outdoors. My experience in working with those, and I can only speak from the ones that I've dealt with on different property and property owners, is that typically they have the ability to remove the lease or terminate the lease upon proof that the development needs to take place where the current billboard resides. And that's the ones at least I've dealt with in this community.
Okay. So because you need a fire road or the driveway or something like that?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? No?
Could I follow up on that?
Sure.
Because the slide you showed us of the outside of those buildings, it's not one continuous building, correct?
No, it's articulated, and there's also...
There's a series of buildings.
There's I would say it's articulated, so it does not look like it's a series. You could probably speak a little...
Yeah, it is one building, but we do have articulation.
Right, so it's staggered.
And we've stepped it back.
So there's no room for a billboard in that staggered.
That's correct. And then I think there's also like a community room as well, which is a separate building of about 2,000 feet.
On the left.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And also to give you an idea, at least right now, of the sizes of these units, they're around 1,700 to 3,500 square feet. They're pretty sizable.
Sure.
Still
Mayor Pro
following
Tem.
up on the billboards without getting too deep, but if you could not get out of the contracts because you didn't meet the burden, let's say, of being able to get out of the contract so that you could build this facility, would you build it around the billboards?
No, I believe the intent with everybody here respectfully is they want to see the billboards down for a nice project to go up. So I don't think, I don't think that is the intent. I mean, if you were to say, yes, we'd love to see a beautiful new billboard, I guess we could do that. But I think the intent is for them to go down.
It's actually the opposite. I guess my question is, can we condition a project, not tonight, of course, but can we condition a project on the removal of billboards?
No.
And I don't think so.
I can just,
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, I can just speak from past council decisions in case we've been involved, and the answer is no, we cannot condition those removals.
Could we have like a development agreement?
Not from my experience, and Candace, jump in if you need to, but no, because the agreement is between with the private property owner and the CBS Outdoor or whatever billboard company owns that. So it's not a city involvement in that. That's a business transaction between those two parties.
We could certainly make sure the buildings would be where the billboards are.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to public comments. This time is reserved for public comments. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city. Thank you. To the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you. The city did receive one written public comment from Bill Tucker representing Wizen Market Square. That was distributed to the city council, posted, and will be part of the record. And there are no further comments or speaker cards.
All right. I do have a rebuttal time for you if you have anything else that you want to say on the subject. Thank you for the time. You got it, no problem. But we're going to move forward on the comments section, and so you'll get to hear a couple more comments going forward. So staff is requesting the city council provide non-binding comments and direction to the applicant regarding this request for pre-screen review of a zoning ordinance amendment. Does any council member have any comments for the applicant now? So I'll start with Council Member Lopez.
Thank you. I just want to say first to my fellow council members that Bill Tucker first suggested this outside of outside of City Hall. I believe he met with several of us just to discuss the idea. And so I encouraged him to come to the Land Use Economic Development Committee so we could talk it through with the experts over here and just kind of hash it out. So we spent a lot of time trying to hash out what it means to be collector, what storage is. Our big concern, which Bill and Anthony and team understood, was that, kind of what Council Member Sylvester alluded to, that we don't want to change something and then either have an unintended consequence across the entire town in all of these same zoning areas, nor do we want like mini storage to proliferate up along our freeway, which is why those are in place. So we spent a long time defining collector, defining what mini storage versus not mini storage is, and I think we did a decent job, and this is why we encouraged them to come to you, because we didn't, they don't want to proceed unless they know how the council feels about some of these tweaks up at the beginning before they go any further. So, personally, I was very intrigued when Bill came to me, because it really is an underused piece of land. It's not going to have housing there, right, over the freeway. and it is a pretty narrow, busy road, and so I was intrigued with the idea of having something there that, you know, might just be a little bit better on the eyes. So, you know, we worked really hard. Obviously, any edits that they bring to us we would go through our staff and our legal to make sure that those unintended consequences don't happen. But, you know, after hearing from the team a couple of times, you know, I don't know what else could be on that land. There's not a lot of options for that piece of land. And, you know, Bill Tucker is a great business owner in town. I think he really, unlike a lot of businesses and developers, really gets the spirit of Agoura Hills. And, you know, to find somebody who's willing to do that, I think is special. So we were very interested in hearing about it. And then, of course, really two of the very big things that residents talk to me about are getting rid of the billboards and why we don't have a monument sign. So I'm game to take a look at this, and that is my non-binding feedback.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf?
Echoing what Councilmember Klein Lopez says, we've been, Mr. Tucker approached me a while ago. We briefly discussed this, and it was brought to the committee where we've spent a lot of time discussing this, because it could be a slippery slope for these unintended consequences. So I appreciate the staff time that they've kind of looked into this and really narrowed down what the uses could be. This is a really visible piece of property in Agoura Hills, right on the freeway, and so I do think that this could provide an opportunity for enhancement. What I'm really interested in is the tree planting, and I'd like to see a lot of plants that go in, a lot of natives too, and I'd like to see some, you know, oak trees if possible on the property. I know that takes a long time to grow, but I think that it'd be great if we could find some spots on the property to put in some valley oaks that can that people will see driving by, so it can be an improvement. As I've mentioned in the committee, Agoura Hills, I think, used to be known as Billboard City. It was one of the reasons they incorporated in 1982 was to have some local authority regarding billboards. So I think it could be a positive getting some of these taken down. And I'm trying to figure out how to close this out without saying anything binding, but I think that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Bill also came and spoke to me, and we had a good chat about it, and I too think it looks like an interesting use. It's not very impactful, frankly. There won't be a lot of traffic added to Canwood, which I think is important. In the drawing, there's palm trees, and I would highly suggest that the next renderings have no palm trees and lots of oak trees, like Councilmember Jeremy Wolf said, because, you know, palms are just, you know, they're a fire hazard, and we wouldn't want to see, you know, anything happen there. The changes that I would suggest is, so even though I like what's being proposed, although non-binding, it looks like something that would be a good use for that area. My concern is once we amend the code then is the code for anybody else who wants to come in. And so that's why I would prefer the language to read, and private garage for collector motor vehicle, rather than and private garage, comma, collector motor vehicle, because I think it opens the door to mini storage. I mean, you know, a private garage, what does that mean? It means you could go store whatever you want there, a motor home, or, you know, cannabis, for example, possibly. That's next on the agenda, so. So I would like to see that change, and then the other change is to clean up the language where it almost made it sound like part of the exception was trucks and equipment, and the rest of the issues I think can be dealt with, but, you know, in the conditional use permit. And so I'm comfortable with those changes moving forward with, a zone change, if it were to ever come in front of me. To give you a heads up, I'm comfortable with what it is, but I would, take a fresh look at it if it came back before me.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Thank you. Well, I think Bill made the rounds with all of us because I met with Bill and Anthony too last week. So I did get his vision of what he'd like to do. I know he's very proud of what's happening at the Wizen Center, and he loves Agoura and wants to see quality development. So this is an enticing project. But again, lawsuits have been lost on commas. So I think we have to be very careful with our legal wording as we go forward. And my one concern is that what happens down the line because they are going to be individually owned, so that the city has some control, and it doesn't suddenly, 10 years from now, something else goes in there that we have, had no idea about, and then suddenly it's there, and then what do we do? So I don't know, Candace, if that can be,
If you don't mind,
we're
if I can pipe in on, because we did discuss that in
Yes.
the committee meeting, and it's my understanding, and then correct me if I'm not explaining it, it's like any other, it becomes a code issue at that point. So for example, up at the top of Reyes Adobe, where the medical building is, you can't sleep there. You can't store an RV there. It's, it's part of the lease agreement. And so they would be breaking the lease agreement, and it would be code violation and all of that if they were to go outside of the use.
Right. And I mean, I'm not saying this would ever happen, but they're going to have every individual space is going to have a lounge area. I mean, we don't want after prom parties and things going on. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying it would ever happen, but, with the use of alcohol and things like that, because it would be a private residence.
I would assume there will be the use of alcohol there and cigars.
For adults. Yeah.
For adults, right.
But anyway.
But I see what you're saying, and I'm thinking out loud that would be like in a code enforcement issue, just like it would be.
Could I refer to our birthday girl?
Technically speaking, it would be, Denise Thomas, Community Development Director, technically speaking, it would be a violation, but it is so difficult to get a warrant to go into a storage unit to find someone doing something that they wouldn't want to do. So realistically, once the storage facility is constructed, for all intents and purposes, we wouldn't be able to gather enough evidence to go in unless it was egregious. Like if there's a sting and the sheriff finds that there's illegal activity, then yes, they would be able to do that. But if someone were to call and say, yesterday I was at a party in a private garage and they were serving alcohol, there's really nothing that I could do. I would tell them, well, you need to call the sheriff, or did you call the sheriff? So enforcement, once the roll-up doors go down, it's private premises. And the level of evidence that our prosecutor would need to obtain a warrant to go in and gather the evidence we need to enforce it would be insurmountable. I wouldn't be able to go in there. So I don't think code is going to be very helpful, but they could call the sheriff. If illicit things are going on or unlawful things are going on, they could call the sheriff.
And could I ask Anthony, are you going to limit the numbers of people that can be inside a unit at one time?
Can you come up to the mic? Thank you.
You're afraid of that there's going to be like big parties in these units or something of that nature?
Yes.
Is that? I think what we had proposed is that there would be a clubhouse for a gathering of the members. I'm open to, I think Bill would be too, to kind of having a reasonable number of people. But I think you're talking about people with collector cars, like very expensive cars. They're not going to want 50 or 100 people in a 1,700 square foot unit where somebody could damage a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or something of that nature, or a Model T Ford, or
Depends
Yeah.
on the age of the owner.
it's a good point.
So, thank you.
I can add to that too. The building codes and the fire department, there's limitations on occupancies and classifications. So there's going to be limitations in how many occupants per space just by those clearances and those permits that we get through those departments.
All right, I'm just throwing all those possibilities out there.
And I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the conditional use permit could condition the hours at the multipurpose room.
You're correct.
Any other comments? Okay. For my comments, I think one of the things I wanted to definitely talk about is the aesthetics a little bit, too, just to feedback on that. Again, the trees or whatever, good idea, but not the palm tree. But I like the fact, too, that we're not looking from the people that are passing it from the freeway, the fact that it's not just a blank wall that they're looking at and it looks like a warehouse type of thing, that I actually like what you presented with that. And so I like the concept of having that. And I think, like we all talked about, this seems like a pretty good use of that limited space on the property. And also, again, I also want to disclose that Mr. Tucker talked to me as well offline, individually. And but I like the concept of it. I think it's a good use of the land. And I also like the fact that you said that you would try to stick to, whenever you're coming in to get the permits for the building and all that, that you're going to try to stick to the code or whatever, not ask for lots of exceptions and all that. I think, to me, that's important as well. So that's some feedback from myself. No problem.
Mr. Mayor, I have
yes,
one more
sure.
comment, because I know we mentioned it when we had questions, but in terms of our discussion, I just want to add to that, the residents of the city of Agoura Hills would just about do anything to have those billboards removed. And I know we can't condition it on that, but I do want you to know, and I know that Bill knows, how important that would be if that were possible, would be to have the removal of those billboards. Thank you.
Got it. All right, so no formal action is required by the city council on this item. And are there any final comments before we move on to the next item? All right. Thank you again for coming in this evening.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Again, happy birthday, Denise.
All right. Next discussion item is discussion regarding commercial cannabis survey. I will now defer to Community Development Director Denise Thomas for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. We are bringing forward one of our council goals. So one of the council goals that you assigned to the Community Development Department was to contract with a professional survey preparer, if you will, to develop a survey that we could administer to the residents in the community to gauge the desirability of including cannabis and cannabis-related uses in our municipal code. We did what you asked us to do. We've contracted with a consulting firm, and that consulting firm is available this evening to answer whatever questions you have. Robbie Nesevic, our new principal planner, is going to walk you through kind of the staff presentation, and then we're going to turn it over to him. Robbie and the consultant and I are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, and happy birthday. And good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight I will be introducing to you Adam Probalski, who will be giving a quick presentation about the survey that was included in your staff reports for this item. He will be talking about the survey process, the draft survey, and survey strategies, and also just a few images showing an example of what the online and mobile survey platform might look like. Staff will then be presenting you with our recommendation, and we'll toss it over to the City Council for any questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Adam Probalski from Probalski Research. You on, Adam?
I
We can't
apologize
hear
for
you
the
if you are coming, if
I
you are.
apologize for the delay. We'll have him on. This contract is, it predates our new policies, and so we have to bring him in through audio. He'll be available once the survey is administered in person, but tonight, he's here over the phone.
Hi, folks.
We can hear you.
All right, great. Fantastic. I guess my video doesn't work. I don't know if that's intended, but I'm going to walk you through a little bit about us. Probelsky Research, been around for about 30 years, but constantly innovating. And we are the public opinion research firm that does the most work for government throughout the state of California, everyone from the State Coastal Conservancy and the Department of Water Resources down to a ton of local agencies like City of Burbank and Santa Clarita. We do a lot of work in the cannabis space for local government, working on ordinances and tax issues for everyone from Huntington Park to Coachella and other cities as well. So we are here as a goal to give you some perspective from what the public thinks on this subject matter. We'll go to the next slide and I'll get into some of the other details. Robbie, if you've got the chance to move us along, I'll talk about the next slide. All right. So our goal here is to gauge voter support and understanding of cannabis potential uses in the city. We will survey a total of 400 completed surveys among voters. And to give you some perspective, this means that in a typical statewide poll, you'll see 900 or 1,200 responses. In a typical countywide poll in Los Angeles, let's say, you might have 400 or 600. So 400 completes in Agoura Hills is quite robust and very going to give you very accurate numbers. We're going to, of course, include Spanish because we pretty much do that everywhere in California, and it's multi-mode. So our job is to reach out to representative part of the voters and make sure it's representative based on age and gender and geography and party and all those different demographics. And so we'll do that by talking to people on the phone, because some people prefer to do that these days, not as many as used to. And some of them will even be on their landlines. In addition to that, we will have people talk to people on their mobile phones, of course, but most people will respond online because that's just how they prefer to talk to us. Process-wise, we've been to the Local Land Use and Economic Development Committee several times, twice, and we've taken great input from them. We really appreciate when council really gets engaged and gives us their thoughts. So we've created a survey instrument based upon that, and a lot of back and forth and working with staff. And so today we have a survey instrument that's going to give you insight into what the public thinks and hopefully inform your public policy. Two real goals, if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of get through the the key elements of what we're going to accomplish with the survey, and those are hopefully helping to inform your public policy, give you some sense of what the public thinks, and also inform your outreach. So here, kind of give you a sense of the questions. We ask questions that are kind of broad to get a sense of buy-in, quite frankly, from the public, give them the chance to tell us what's on their mind broadly, what they're concerned about in the community, how to reach out to them, where they're spending time online, and then specifically in those big public-facing departments that you have, the big public-facing services, we want to know what they think of them today, because they would potentially be impacted by having cannabis in the community. And so those are the reasons for these particular questions. We go to the next slide, we talk through some of the elements of what cannabis could look like in the community. So whether there's broad public support, whether there is what drives their support or opposition, what types of cannabis use would be supported, and what kind of mitigating factors, if they were going to save on greenhouse gases or collect revenues for the city so you could use it for whatever you're looking to use it for. Are those things impact people's impressions of cannabis? These are very typical best practice questions that would be asked in any community that is looking to understand whether cannabis is a viable option for the community. And then we do ask a few demographic questions. We have a lot of that data already in the voter file we're going to use, but we ask a couple questions just to validate and make sure that we're being accurate and representative of the community, and so that you have confidence that numbers are reflective of all the voters in the city. And with that, we do have a couple of examples. I think it was requested to show you what maybe the online experience might look like. This is an example of some work we just did in the city of Gardena. So you see it's in a web interface, what it looks like. And then I think we have a couple examples of what it might look like on in a mobile device scenario. So pretty simple, not too exciting to look at, but gives you the perspective of what the experience might be. And we do say about 2/3 of respondents these days are preferring to communicate online. And it's no secret, if you look at the last time you used your phone, the vast majority of those interactions were kind of typing with your thumbs rather than talking to it in your ear. With that, Robbie, I think back to you.
Thank you, Adam. So just to summarize, staff is respectfully requesting City Council to provide staff and Probalski Research with feedback, and hopefully we'll be given direction to survey the community with any requested changes. And with that, I will toss it back for any questions.
Thank you, Rod. Before we move on to public comment, does a council member have questions of staff on the presentation? Yep.
I do.
Councilman Sylvester.
I just looking at the survey, number 16, they would be required to use solar panel energy to power their facilities. And I was just curious, can you do that? Because, why would they be singled out from any other business in the city?
So the idea behind that question, first, the answer to your question is yes. I was the project manager for commercial cannabis in the county of Ventura. And due to the heavy intensive energy use for certain uses, such as cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, and nurseries, we actually required solar on all of the facilities. So the answer is yes, but it does kind of depend on the use as well.
Well, I was going to say, because if you're just a dispensary, then, so that's why it seemed a kind of strange question. So we should define that more if we're going to ask, state that.
Right, we can define that more clearly and state that, if it is just for distribution, then we might have
okay,
solar
all right,
panels.
good.
So we can
Not for an over-the-counter sale in just a regular storefront. And number 17, if consumption lounges, and then you've got similar to cigar lounges, wouldn't it be more similar to hookah lounges? I think cigar is the wrong analogy there. Hookah. The hooks.
My heart stopped for a second, sorry.
Sorry. American. Hooker. You say?
We would be happy to make that change.
Good, okay. And then on number 18, the city could tax cannabis and generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, we don't know. So I just think we should just say would generate new revenue. I mean, I don't think we should promise something that we can't deliver.
Right.
I think that overstates it a bit.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, and then in number 19, limit the number of businesses to just a few locations. I mean, we're not a very big city, so like, we have a limited number of alcohol licenses. Could we have a cap? We would have a cap on the number of...
Yes, most cities do.
Okay, yeah, so if we could just make that clearer. And then in number 20, you're requiring 24/7 security at all facilities. What exactly do you mean by that? Are you just like electronic surveillance, or do you mean armed guards standing there 24/7?
It was more vague in the survey, just to, if somebody was worried about the security aspect, then this would address their concern. We would, if we decided to go through with an ordinance, we would address everything that is specific that we would require for the cannabis businesses. So this is just essentially to provide general,
Right.
yeah, and learning that we can do that as a city.
But would we be requiring, or we would just be requiring security at all facilities? Because, I mean, at night, you're not going to have someone sitting there.
So it is typical to have 24/7 security, so especially at commercial cannabis facilities, for instance, in Ventura County.
Where they're growing it and things like that. But are we...
Everything, so
Everything.
including retail. So we would definitely require some sort of 24/7 security.
So it could be electronic.
Right.
Right.
We would pencil out the specifics within the ordinance, but we would require some sort of 24/7 security.
Councilmember, do you mind if I pipe in?
Yes,
Just because from the subcommittee, we did discuss this. I think it's important to know that we're not talking about the ordinance itself. We're asking people
What
if
they
they would
think.
support if this were the case.
Right.
So we're not saying that it will generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're saying it could generate tax.
Yes.
Or if it did, would you be more supportive? Or would you be supportive if there was security? So
Yes.
I think it's important to look at this in the frame of the question of whether the public would support it, because if they do, and security is important to them, then this is the discussion for
Okay,
later.
all right, for later. But I still don't think we should say hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, because I think we should just say it would generate revenue.
We can make that change. We just wanted it to be vague and to convey that we would get a lot of revenue.
That's why I think just saying generate revenue is vague. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley-Weber.
Yes, I swear we didn't talk about this. You literally asked most of my questions. But so let me start with, is it possible, I take a lot of surveys. I just do that all the time. And so I kind of like to know what the survey is about right up front. And is it possible that in the very beginning we say, this is a survey about your opinion of cannabis in the city of Agoura Hills, rather than it's just about your opinion is important, blah, 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 and then we go through questions 1 through 7, asking them if they're happy with the way we're running the city. I don't mind so much if we want to ask those 7 questions, because if that gives the survey, if that generates good data, then, but you can lose people by going through the 7 things. But if they know it's about cannabis and they want to weigh in on that, then I think that, they'll stick with it. So I think that if we can put that up front, that would be good. I'm not quite sure why we ask everybody all these other things, but
we did ask that question as well, and I think Adam can answer that, because that was my question too.
Yeah,
so Adam, I don't know if you...
I understand from staff, it tells you a lot of information about where they're coming from and who they are, but I don't know.
Yeah,
if you
so
wanna weigh in on
on the, specifically on kind of announcing the broader content of the survey, our strong preference would be to not do that early on, to kind of keep the structure as is. And here's the reason. We don't want to bias the answers. We want people to have a natural flow of the survey to give us their general impressions of the services and these other things early on, and then move into the subject matter more specifically. The key to this survey, making it representative is our job to make sure we get that full complete number of completes from all those folks. And so we're not worried about losing people necessarily. It just, it's not how things really work. We engage people, we ask them their opinion, we have all kinds of ways of keeping them engaged. And our strong preference is not to bias them early on with that message and just simply go through the questions as they are.
And you don't think that you're going to lose people with the first 7 questions?
No, and if we do, then we wouldn't necessarily have kept them all along. It's not, no, it's not a concern at all. I mean, we're calling about issues in Agoura Hills. I mean, as you know, someone who takes surveys, people take surveys because they're, perhaps interested in the subject matter, but more importantly, oftentimes they think it's part of their civic duty or the board. But our job is to call and email and text and engage, and if we've got to take half the survey and then call you back because you got to go change a diaper, that's okay too. We absolutely will have the ability to get the completed surveys we need from a fully representative group as is. And that's our strong preference.
You don't think that it's good to tell people up front how long it's going to take for them to take the survey? Most of the surveys, if not all nowadays that I take, tell me right up front whether it's going to be a 2-minute survey, a 5-minute survey, or more than 5 minutes.
I appreciate that. Our strong preference, again, is not to. We think that is a factor that makes people sometimes not want to continue the survey. And the key here is no one's being paid, no one's being compensated for this survey. It's a public opinion survey, kind of different from a survey you might take on your phone about a product or something like that, where you might people might get a few pennies or points or something like that. This is a different scenario, so we tend to have really great participation in these sorts of surveys, and again, it's our job. We're not done until we get 400 fully representative respondents from the voter pool.
Okay. And so then I see things like, in question number 8, and I'm wondering, why do you say in general, would you support or oppose? Why not just say, would you support or oppose?
So we are, I say strong preference, and obviously we will make changes unless it's critically important. The way we approach the language choice is sort of a natural language choice, a natural flow of language, and it's the way people talk oftentimes, and so that's what we want to mirror. We want a comfort level with the language choice, whether it's on the phone or in the written form, and that's why we use those qualifiers sometimes. But if you feel strongly, we can remove those if necessary.
Okay, and then, I had some of the same concerns, and so some of the questions I have, what's the purpose of asking that if they support a consumption lounge, like implying that the city would make them have to have, that they couldn't get in their car and drive home? Is there a purpose for that? Because we can't do that. Isn't that a little misleading to
I'll
people?
let staff, if they want to interject, or just say some of these questions, they are elements of possible elements of what an ordinance would be. So I think you're right. You couldn't mandate someone not to get in their car, but you could mandate that if that was a use in the city, that they would provide transportation. So these are, again, things that are we see in other communities that have cannabis, and that's why we test them. But I'll let staff kind of weigh in on that as well.
So like some of the stuff I'm thinking about, and I know I spoke to Robbie earlier, is that I don't want to offend our residents with implying that, we're going to not let these, if we have cannabis lounges, that we're going to be tough on them and we're going to not let them, drive home. We'll let them drink and drive all over the city, but we won't let them smoke and drive. And it feels, I don't know, as a survey taker, that's a little offensive.
So the survey is just, we're really just trying to gather as much information as possible. So that's why kind of the methodology is to first ask if somebody would just be upfront and willing to allow cannabis consumption lounges in storefronts, commercial and industrial zones.
I'm good with
and
that.
we don't quite elaborate on it. But if they're, let's say they're 70% for it, not a full yes or no answer, then they would be able to elaborate on that later in the survey. And if some of their concerns is, it'll cause some people to drive under the influence, maybe that's something that's information that we can use if and when we decide to draft an ordinance, and maybe we can put some conditions on the use. So it's trying to give staff as much information as possible if and when we move forward with an ordinance.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yeah.
can I interject for a moment?
Sure.
So sitting on the committee, every question that you guys have asked, we had the same question.
Yeah.
But what we kind of didn't look at it is that, we don't want to be precious with gathering information. We're trying to be realistic with the residents, and nothing is locked into place. It's just information gathering.
Yeah, I get that, but you know what? I have to be honest that the last time we did a survey, I found it rather offensive. I found that it was misleading. I think it was on housing. And with all due respect, if this is the same company, and so that's what's bringing my attention to it. Saying to our residents, like, having retail sales of cannabis would allow residents to reduce greenhouse gases. You don't find that offensive? To be throwing in greenhouse gases and solar energy, let's just ask them. Is one of your concerns safety or driving under the influence? Those are good questions, in my opinion. I don't know why we have to kind of pussyfoot around to get to what we're really trying to find out. If people are comfortable with it, then we'll look at getting an ordinance, and maybe we'll have a lounge or two or whatever. But I don't know. There's something about it that just, I don't know. When I say I'm offended by it, it makes me feel like, like we think they're stupid. Like our residents are stupid enough to think that we're going to actually pass a law that says, if you go to a cannabis lounge, you're not going to be able to drive home. That's just, I just don't know what you get from that. If a follow-up question then says, if you're against consumption lounges, are you concerned about people driving under the influence? I'm good with that. That's perfectly fine. You get the information about if public safety is the issue. So I'm good with that. It's the same thing with the question of saying generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. I actually agree with Councilmember Sylvester. Well, there's two ways to look at that. We don't know if it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's based on how many? 1 dispensary or 10 dispensaries? So, I just think it's a good question. The city could tax the cannabis. That's the real question. And then, get new revenue. And then, and that could be used to improve essential city services. But my understanding is we could use that money to buy open space. We can use it. It's at the discretion.
I think that that's not the point of the survey. The point of the survey isn't to figure out what we can use this money for. And the way that it's written here makes it look like a statement, but what they're doing is they're measuring support. So they're almost like intentionally provoking a little bit to see what the support range is. So it's, trust me, we had the same
Yeah, I'm sure you
reactions,
did.
but the way that the surveys work is just to kind of gauge the feeling of the person who's responding. And if they're offended by it, that's information. But also, and I'm not saying we should offend our residents, but the other thing they explained in this survey is that they are asking similar and the same questions in different ways, in different areas of the survey to try to just get the feel. So
I guess, I mean, I trust you guys. I'm just thinking to myself that it's like to improve essential city services translates to me that unless we do this, you're not going to have essential city
No.
services. Or,
It's
you
to
know,
gauge their support if we were to do that. We're not promising anything in a survey. We're just gauging the reaction of different statements that may or may not be a part of the ordinance. Again, it's just information collecting to see that if people don't like that, then it doesn't end up in the ordinance if we do that. Like I think we're overthinking. I think you're projecting, because we did the same thing.
I mean, I was
You're
shocked and
projecting
offended
this
when
into an ordinance, and that's not what this is.
yeah.
But can I just bounce in now? I completely agree with Mayor Pro Tem, because, I mean, you know,
must take
people
surveys,
can't drive. I mean, you don't need to put that in the
Mm-hmm.
survey. Just ask them, do they want hookah lounges? And, you know, having retail sales here means you don't have to drive elsewhere. We don't have to say reducing greenhouse gas
Yes.
emissions.
I mean, to
that-
reduce greenhouse gases, I'm sorry, we're
Yeah.
throwing in important environmental issues.
Cannabis
into-
has a lot of important environmental impacts. This is all part of
think
the
we're getting into
information we're gathering.
I think I'm going to stop us just because I think we're getting into the discussion. We're still going to go into this in the deliberations, but I think we'll wait
Okay, so
maybe
then.
till the deliberations.
Okay, so let's wait for, I think you're right, Mr. Mayor. And then, okay.
All right. Any questions of staff, though? Not questions of other council members. Any questions
What
of
I'm
staff?
hearing from staff, though, is that we can change the questions if we want to. Is that right, or is that not right?
We
I
can
think that's what-
change.
I think that's what we're here for.
We can change. There's some change, of course, that we can accommodate. But if it's going to affect the statistical significance of the survey, then I would defer to the best management practices of the consultant, because that's why we hired them. So.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Any other questions of staff before we move on? Okay, all good. All right, so we're now going to move to public comments. This section is reserved for public comment. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
All right, does any council member have any further questions of staff?
I have one question.
Councilmember Sylvester.
No, this is just about distribution of the survey. Our consultant said they were going to send it out to 400 residents. Are we not going to send it out like in our community newsletter as an option? Ms. Brink?
Adam, could you reply to that?
So, in an effort to get a statistically valid and accurate reflection of the community, the way we do that in a voter survey is to use a multi-mode format. Like I said, telephone, email to text, email to online, and text to online. This is not an opt-in survey. It's not for everyone to show up and give their opinion. It's for us to reach out to individuals that would be reflective of your voters. And the goal there is to make sure that no one person or group could influence the outcome. It is to have an accurate reflection of what your voters think.
Okay, can I ask you a follow-up question? So you're going to single out the first 400, correct? If you don't get answers from all of them, do you keep going until you get 400 answers?
Yes, 400 fully representative based on all the different demographics. Absolutely. 400 completed surveys.
Okay. Any other questions?
So to be clear, 400 is the floor, not the ceiling, right? We could get, is it once we get 400 complete surveys, we're done? Or, but the target is 400, and if, 1,000 people complete it, that's okay too. I forgot from committee if we just.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but what will happen is we will get probably the first 320, 350, and then we start being very intentional about filling in the proportional quotas for the different groups. So if I've got to get, another dozen Latina moms and another five, South Asian doctors and a couple regular old white folk, then that's what we're going to work on, right? So it is unlikely we'll have a whole lot more participate because we're going to be intentional about what we're looking for to make sure we have it reflective of age and gender and different parts of town and all that sort of thing.
Okay, and then following up on that, thank you for that. Are we doing geographics too in the city of Agoura? I didn't know that that was something that we were targeting. Like, is that part of yeah.
Yeah, so we use a system called it's a stratified random sample. So by nature, the survey will be reflective of all the different demographics and geography because we are randomly reaching out to people among the voter file, and so yes, it will be reflective geographically. We're not. We don't have any directive to report on data geographically, but it will be representative and have responses from all throughout the city.
Thank you.
Okay, and I
Sorry,
actually.
can I have just one more follow-up question to start? This is just the first step, correct? And then depending on what the survey says, then we will go further out into the community. Am I correct?
The purpose of the survey is to take a look at what the composition of Agoura Hills is, to get a statistically significant sample, poll them. We can take other information, but for the purposes of the statistical analysis, you need to be representative of the electorate. Right. That information will be gathered, and then Adam will come to another subsequent city council meeting, and he will provide you with the feedback from the surveys. After that, you will deliberate and direct us whether you want us to amend the code or whether you don't, and in what way.
But we will have time then to go out, like if we wanted to have a community meeting or something.
You would have time
so
for all
this
of
is
that.
really the first step.
This is the very first step. It's step 0,
Yes.
actually. We haven't even begun the process of amending it. We want to find out how our residents feel about it.
Right, thank you.
Adam, I had one specific question that relates to what Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber brought up concerning the beginning questions on the survey. Is the reason, one rationale I can see why you would add those questions at the beginning of the survey is to understand whether the person that was taking the survey, are they like a disgruntled person in the city? So in other words, you're asking questions like in general about are they happy with the city services and how things are going in the city, and if they say no, I'm not, and things are terrible, then that gives you an idea of kind of how they're going to answer the rest of the questions on the survey. Is that one of the reasons why you do that?
That could be have some utility, but no, our goal is, for instance, the question about police services. If people, if someone says that they have a real concern about public safety, and they thematically then are opposed to cannabis, that may be an indicator that they believe that there's and you'll see throughout the survey that they have a concern over the use and the impact on public safety. Similarly, if you have a concern over road maintenance, you may have a concern over folks coming in from out of town and using your roads. So it's really about the potential impact of cannabis on the community rather than anything else. But the fact that you're going in the field and you will have some other additional data, like for instance, the apps and then where they get their news, essentially where they spend their time online, that's partly to assist in whatever outreach, as it was just explained. The next steps, you now know where to kind of reach them easier. But also so that will inform your outreach process. So each of them are intentional specifically for this survey to as it relates to cannabis or the next steps for the city.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley, whoever you have a question?
No, no
Okay.
questions.
All right.
Oh,
So
sorry.
we'll now move into deliberations. Why don't I start with Mayor Pro Tem Buckley?
Thank you. Let me start by thanking the committee. It sounds like you had the same issues that I'm having. I'll defer to the experts on these questions in the beginning, and I'll just pray that we get back good responses, that people like what we're doing, because be careful what you wish for. In my opinion, I would like to be telling them right up front that this is a survey about cannabis. If the expert feels like that would, have an impact on the responses, then I would go along with that. But I just, as a survey taker, I wouldn't go through all this garbage. I would just, I would be like, I'd like to know what do you really want to know from me? And then I think questions 8 through 15 are perfect. They're right to the point. There's nothing offensive about them. It just comes right out and asks what, if they want to allow this kind of cannabis use, this kind of a cannabis use. The only thing that might be, and I don't know how you go explain, what exactly is cannabis manufacturing? Is that growing, or is that baking it, or is that, I'm a little confused, and you don't have to answer me, but I just don't know if other people in the city of Agoura Hills are going to know what manufacturing means. But we all know what retail is. We all know about consumption. We all know about the delivery. R&D is, I don't know. When I first read it, I thought it meant R&D, like people were going to be getting high in a building, and they were going to be tested, and it was going to be research and development about what the high was. But I was corrected by staff, fortunately. So, I'm just saying that those are terms that, may be really, really common in the cannabis industry that I'm not familiar with. But anyways, I do like that they're very direct and to the point, and people get to say exactly what they want. But then we get into 16 with the solar panel energy, but none of those cannabis businesses talk about growing. So that's where I'm confused. I guess it could be indoor growing. So, I don't like the whole solar energy one. And then starting through 17 through, here's some things that I would like to see. I would like to see that we take out that they don't drive under the influence of cannabis. If we wanted to have a follow-up question of like, why wouldn't you support a consumption lounge? And give like 3 choices, public safety issues, whatever they might be. With 18, I would like to see taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars and just have in new revenue, and just new revenue, period. 19, I see it as, let's give people the choice on 19. Like, the follow-up question would be, do you want 1 dispensary? Do you want 2 to 4 dispensaries? Do you want more than, are you okay with more than 5 dispensaries? Because, to me, that just doesn't give me any real information. 19, 20, if the retail, I'm fine with 20. I'm fine with 21. I think that's an important one. 22. I don't like that. I don't like that reducing greenhouse gases. You want to say buy local? Okay, that's fine. If you want to say buy locally and, reduces travel to other communities that offer retail, I'm fine with that, but reducing greenhouse gas emissions that's just too much for me. And 23, I know why that's in there. So getting to 24, the first one where Smith is saying, I don't have a problem with that one. But Jones saying there's no evidence of negative community impacts. I don't know if that's true. And Agoura Hills could increase revenues that would go toward essential services like public safety. To me, that's suggestive. That's suggesting that if you say yes for cannabis, production, manufacturing, whatever you like, lounges, that we're going to take that money and use it for public safety and road repairs. I'd rather just go towards services, city services, because I just think it's misleading. That's how I feel about it. Or just increase. And then something that's not in here at all has to do with health benefits. Don't we want to know if our residents are concerned about, the smell? Are they concerned about, cannabis-induced psychosis? Are they concerned about, diseases that come from, are they concerned about any of the health issues? And I don't know if that's a sub-question, and maybe there's a reason you don't ask that, but maybe that's a sub-question for people who don't want cannabis. Is that one of the reasons, is because of health issues? So that's the only other thing that I see missing, and the rest of it is fine.
Councilmember Sylvester.
I'd like to start where you just left off with health benefits. Some people who are going through chemotherapy and things like that, it is beneficial for them.
Right.
And they have a medical prescription anyway. And we don't have anywhere here a question about would you just accept medicinal marijuana? Is there a reason why we haven't asked that? You can't do that. Okay, so that's the reason we haven't asked it. No, I'm just curious. I think I've already said the things that I found and said, so I agreed with you there. I'm just curious to, get the responses and see what our community feels at this point. But I do think, saying it will just generate additional revenue for the city is a fairer way of saying it. That's my comments. I've already said the others. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
I appreciate the discussion, and looking through it, I like what you're saying, Councilmember Sylvester, about the not putting a dollar amount. I appreciate that. I think this came to us two different times, and the first time, I was like taken aback at some of these questions, and it took a little while for the way it was explained to me that we're kind of, it's information gathering. And this is non-binding. We're just trying to find out where our residents feel. And this also isn't the first survey that they've put together, I think, on this item too. So they've been successful. So I'm ready to move forward and appreciate the debate, though, because this is a really, really important issue for our city. And so this is just another step to continue the process, but I do think we do, this is just one part of it. I think, Councilmember Sylvester, again, you brought up a good point, maybe having some kind of community forum in the future. But we are arming ourselves with information and with kind of a gauge of where our residents are. So, thank you.
Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. I wish, because of the Brown Act, we can't all talk about this, but I wish you could have seen us when we first got this, because it was the same thing. I called Nate, and I called our city manager, and I said, what? I was so blown away because it was not at all what I was expecting. Mm-hmm. The conversations with the consultant talked me down, and it really took a while, but we had some of the same reactions that you have, The thing is that, like, for example, the questions 16 through 22, the question is, would you be more or less likely to support if? So they're meant to be, provocative isn't the right word, but they're meant to be a statement. It's not what's going to be in our ordinance. It's not what's going to be, it's not meant to offend. The whole point is to get the reaction of if they would support or not. So it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that. But going back to the beginning, I had the same concerns that we were, spending the first amount of time, just chit-chatting and this and that. I'm comfortable with the explanation from the consultant that we don't want a bias. This is something that they do all the time. They know how to warm people up and get the feel of the surveyee, is that a word? So I'm comfortable with the order, even though it threw me at first. We did edit questions 11 through 15 a lot, because originally those were going to be randomized as well, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was afraid that the first question that someone was going to be asked about cannabis was going to be something like, are you comfortable manufacturing in a commercial? And I was clutching my pearls. I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine starting the survey off. So we did, just so you know, we did ask for some of these questions to go in a certain order so that we could lead up, because again, what I've heard in the community is that there are some people who are interested in retail purchases, and that's what I wanted to focus on. So that's why those questions are organized in that order, because we felt that that was the way to ease into that conversation. I agree that 16 through 22 are odd. I understand the point of information gathering. I understand the point that these are not statements, they're questions of how you feel about them. I also thought the solar one was very odd. I'd be fine to take that out. I agree that the comment about just taking the words reducing greenhouse gas emissions out is fine, because again, what I've heard from residents isn't that they want to reduce greenhouse gases, it's that they just want to buy local.
Yeah.
So I would be fine with focusing on removing that and just focusing on buying local. And yes, I agree that I'd be fine taking out the hundreds of thousands. But we do want people to weigh in on the fact that it would bring tax revenue. So, I'm fine generalizing that up. And I think 19, limit the number of businesses to just a few locations. I think that I'm good with that staying in the way it is, because I think that's what our neighbors are doing. I think, and again, people can agree with it or disagree with it. That's the information we're trying to get. So I'm fine with leaving that one the way it is. And I would be interested to hear from the consultant what he thinks about adding a question about health benefits. I think that's a really good point that we're not tapping into, and I think something that I would like to know. I mean, that's information I would like to know. So if there's a good statistical reason that that's not in there, I'd like to hear that. But if there's a way to put it in, I think that's a good add. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think my comments to kind of finish this off is, I kind of like the fact that I like the fact that we're adding in these general questions, just to be able to also have a survey go out to check and see how the residents feel we're doing. And also, I do feel it's important. Some people are very negative people. They'll answer negative to everything that you ask them. If it's bright sunshine day outside, they'll say, oh, it's going to rain in an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is. And so you want to know whether they're kind of more pessimistic or optimistic people when you're asking them the rest of the questions on the survey. So I kind of like that part of the beginning of the survey. And then I also agree with the comments that were being made concerning either the health the negative health consequences and also the smell. I think that's something that it's mentioned to me quite a bit about marijuana is the smell. And so I definitely want to have that question added into the survey. And I think we had a consensus on that as well. And I agree with most of the comments that have been made today, the rest of the comments on specific questions around the dollar amount and the general revenue that would come into the city from the survey. So those are my thoughts on it. And
Could I just add one thing? Because
sure.
you're talking about the smell, but I do want to say that a lot of the products they sell have no smell because they're edible.
Right. Okay.
So I don't think we should focus on the smell because I really don't think that's an issue. I mean, that may be in the lounge where there's smoke, but in the lounges they eat edibles too. So.
Right. I don't know where you'd put it. Just in some sort of way of that, again, is it one of your, concerns? Is one of the reasons that you would oppose it is because of the odor? Just like is one of the reasons that you would support it or oppose it is for health benefits.
Right.
And again, I'm not sure how you word that, and I would leave that to the expert.
Yeah, but I think the odor is a minor thing nowadays.
Not if you live next door to a dispensary.
Well, then you're not going to be
working.
living next door because we're putting it in an industrial zone anyway.
Well,
I hope you're not living
but
in
no. But if you live, if you work.
Yeah, we're not discussing the merits today, remember?
Yeah. So, but anyway, okay. So then the other thing I just wanted to say is, I'm good with everything that you guys have all talked about. I feel really about number 24 and Joan saying, let's do it so that we can, the money could go towards public safety and road repairs. I would just rather say just go toward essential services.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
I just feel like that's just such a misnomer, so that somebody could say like, well, I hate the crime's going up, and so I'm going to say yes on this commercial cannabis so that it doesn't make sense, but I'm just saying that,
Well, both those statements are opinions. That's the point of it, right?
Yeah. But public safety, I don't know. Then I think then you have to give the person who's deciding whether that would influence them. If you threw in public safety, road repairs, purchases of open space.
No, but there's nothing different between that and saying that it will result in increased crime and traffic accidents. It's not a fact.
I agree. I don't like that either.
No, but that's the point. The point is that it's not a fact. It's to get someone's opinion on where they land in this realm of what they think cannabis is.
I see what you're saying, but to me, it's putting out misinformation.
Yes, because we're giving the positive. So when we're giving the positive, we want it to be accurate.
No, it's not meant to be a factual statement. It is meant to be which would you rather, which would you agree with more? It's not binding us to anything.
No,
and the way that they do it, they're not promising anything. It's to get the temperature of how someone feels. This goes back to the way they explained it in the subcommittee, is that they're asking the same question in different ways. So it's a way to take that temperature. They're not promising anything, and they're just saying which statement do you agree with more?
Yeah, but they may not agree with the public safety and road repairs. That's what we're saying.
It's just
so we're saying let's just say city
it could increase
services,
revenues that could
and
be used for city services. Why does it have to be tied to public safety?
Yeah.
Because it's an example.
But would somebody really be saying, yeah, I'm all for cannabis so that the money could go to public safety? I don't know. That doesn't sound...
I cannot tell you how many people talk to me about wanting to increase our public safety.
Right, and so
funds.
they're going to have cannabis come into the city?
This is part of the discussion of cannabis, is that revenue comes in, that we would, should we have an ordinance, get to use. So this takes the temperature of that.
But I still think it should just be revenue. We're creating new revenue sources.
I really, I'm strongly encouraging you to take this because they're trying to paint a picture. In this example, they're trying to be specific. They're not trying to be general. They're trying to paint a picture in your head. This isn't the ordinance. This isn't the way it will be. They're trying to get people to answer the same question in a different way by painting a scenario in their head. So if you take out the details of a scenario, it waters that answer down.
But if you put that scenario out there, that the option would be that if we have cannabis businesses in the city of Agoura Hills, that we would use that money for public safety.
We're not promising that. We're not.
I know we're not promising it, but we're putting it in people's minds.
But that's part of the survey, is that there is, should we sell cannabis or allow the sales of cannabis? Don't worry, Nate, we're not selling cannabis. We're giving Nate heart attacks here between hookah lounges and cannabis sales. It's the information gathering that we are trying to get.
Yeah, it just seems misleading to me. I don't like it, but
I don't know if Robbie or Adam, you have strong feelings about why, if that can be changed or not.
Adam, would you please weigh in and let us know if there's a way to reconcile their concerns and still provide a scenario that would gauge what you're trying to gauge in the survey?
Sure. On this specific question, I do like it the way it is, and the rationale is kind of actually, as it's been explained, is to take two arguments of what residents, what voters in the city might say to each other, the neighbor to neighbor conversation that may get it wrong, that may not have it totally factual, but kind of what a conversation might look like on the subject matter once you kind of talk much more publicly and openly about potentially bringing cannabis to the city. So that's the logic for the way we constructed it. If there's consensus to take away the specific allocation of where the resources would go, I'll certainly acquiesce to that. But as the councilwoman's explaining, it really is to illustrate this idea of what it would look like and to put a finer point, quite frankly, on and validate the questions that we've asked earlier. Because if you can kind of see through the survey, we ask the support in general early on. Then we have a whole bunch of conversation about cannabis, all the different impacts and positives, negatives, whatever it might be. And then we ask it again. And then this question is intended to ask it a third time and kind of validate those data and see if in a more, in a less, academic, a less, antiseptic way, and more of a kind of visceral way, where people fall. So that's the logic behind it. But certainly if there's consensus, we can modify to make it more generic where those dollars are going to be allocated or in that scenario. Obviously, you haven't made any decisions. It's going to be a policy decision. But the goal here is to give you some idea of, it looks like people really support this idea because there's public safety resources involved, or because you're going to allocate dollars, or you're going to, keep people local and not have to have people driving around. Whether that's involves greenhouse gases or not, I'm not going to, you've already kind of indicated you don't want that. That's fine. It's really just to give a sense of what attributes of having cannabis in town might move people.
Can I just
Yep.
mention, I think part of it, public safety and road repairs, it just sounds so generic, because I'm really proud of our roads, and I think we repair them very well. So I think for our residents, if we said public safety and protecting, open space, if you'd like that, or something like that.
Well, I mean, I just think you get,
You know what I mean?
you get
Because road
more- you
repairs,
get both kinds of people.
it's not very sexy, road repairs.
And I don't see
And I
anything
think
in
that
here
our
about
roads are
public
really good. So could maybe we just change the last one to something that you would like?
You know, I
Infrastructure.
mean, I just feel like we're connecting the sale of cannabis. Well, now it's definitely saying retail sale. It's not saying cannabis businesses, which is the manufacturing and the R&D. I don't know why we're limiting it to that now, but whatever. If we're only talking about the retail sales of cannabis, I think creating this idea that we're going to be using it for something specific, I don't see the benefit of that. I see it's better for people to be thinking, you know, there would be an income revenue source, and the city would use it for essential services. Hey, when I started this conversation, yesterday, I was saying, and that the money will be used at the whim of the council. So I've come a long way in just saying, because that's the truth, right? It's at the whim of the council of how that money would be used. And so it might be with public safety, it might be road repairs, it might be purchases of open space. So I just don't like this kind of language out there that implies that that's what it would be used for.
We would be having public workshops, probably more surveys. We would be reaching far more people when it came time to actually discuss this. This is just information gathering on the vibe of what if the people in the city even want this. So
Yeah.
I think I see where you're coming, but I still think that the specific scenario is meant to get an answer that we're trying to get, and that the specifics come later if the vibe is to go forward.
But if the vibe isn't, if we're not getting a good feel for what the vibe of the community is, then we go through all this work, and then where are we?
That's the point. We're doing this to find out because we don't want to go through all this work if it's not what the residents want. That is the point of the
Let's say what the
survey.
residents want is that money to be earmarked to public
Then
safety.
they'll tell us during our public outreach. We're not going to do this without having,
Right.
a lot of outreach. They will have the time to say, if, again, this is an if.
I'll go along with what the subcommittee wants to do with the changes that we've discussed earlier. I just know that, to be perfectly honest, like I said, with no offense to anybody, but the housing survey, is that what, I think it was a housing survey, or maybe it was a development survey. Because the questions were the way they were, for me personally, they told me nothing about what the community wants. I think it was for development. I can't remember if it was development or housing. It goes back. I don't know if anybody was on the council. I think you guys were on it. And then we were presented with the whole survey results, and it was like, well, let's look at this question, So that's how I felt about it. But I'm willing to go along with what the committee wants to do. And I appreciate the time and effort you've put into it, and the contractor with the changes we discussed. And we'll go from there, and we'll see what the community says.
So, thank you for that. But on question 24, so where have we landed on that?
Well, it sounds like the committee wants to keep it the way it is. And, I guess, I don't know, I guess, Chris, you're the deciding factor.
Well,
Because it's
well,
2-2.
I was almost wondering whether we just eliminate the question. Would that hurt the survey?
Well, I think,
If we eliminated it?
you need to have that you either agree with Smith or you agree with Jones. You have to agree with someone, or not. You could disagree with both. That's probably what I would do.
I mean, if I have to weigh in on it, I think for me, the general term is better. I like going general, so I'm sorry. That's kind of just my feeling on it. It's not a life or death thing, so, but I'm just saying that my feeling would be to go to the general, with the general language.
Which is
So
taking
that's-
out public safety and
see.
road repairs.
Right, and just going with essential services, I think that's the word
Yeah.
that you used, and I kind of like that word. So that's what I would,
How about public safety or other city services? Because I'm telling you, public safety is important.
I would take that.
Whatever you guys want to do. I mean, I think the use of the word public safety is a trigger. That's how I feel. It's a trigger. We know that our residents are very unhappy with that. Public safety is a big issue. And so what we're doing is we're tying public safety with tax revenue from cannabis business.
Yeah, they want us to spend more on public safety.
Yeah.
So that is a scenario.
I can't remember the city's name, but at Cal Cities, we were talking at a conference, and a city was able to hire another officer with the income that they did from, they were the first in the region, so they brought on a whole nother full-time officer with the revenue. So I mean, that,
Well, that would be up to the county.
correct,
Right.
correct.
Yeah,
But
unless we hired our own. Yeah.
so are we still stuck now on public safety, or whether we want to include that in?
What
with it?
about public safety and or other city services?
I'm gonna, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not meant to be
Penny,
disagreeable
you like
either.
that one?
I would take that as a compromise, but I still think the generic one is better. Essential city services. Because that's what it would do. It would be wherever we had a hole. Sorry, I haven't turned on my mic. Wherever we have a hole is where we would take our extra revenue to fill. So I agree, it shouldn't be a specific service. Because we never know from year to year what emergencies we're going to have.
Okay, you realize that compromises the entire question. Because again, and Adam, if you would weigh in with me here, the top part is similar. It's taking an example of a pro and a con. So if you're going to water down one, you're now, uneven on this question. So
But then I would disagree on that. Because I think if you like the idea of increasing city revenue, that's what I would look at, increasing city revenue. That's what it will do.
If I could, I think that's a great, the goal here is to be balanced, or equally unbalanced, perhaps is the better way to say it. So to kind of essentially put people into a corner and make them choose, or preferably, hopefully make them choose. I think one way we could address this is we have a tool available to us called a split sample. And what this allows us to do is to ask half of the residents one question, or the respondents, and the other half the other. And in order to follow through on what I think is useful, and what Councilmember Klein Lopez is saying, we could ask 200 of the respondents the question as is, and in order to perhaps make make the other council members happy, and give you a different perspective also that might be useful. Ask the other half that question, where we just kind of make it generic to city services, and that may give you a whole nother level of data, and hopefully make everyone happy.
How's the council members feel about that option?
No, I mean, I think it should just be one.
One
Just want
that
one.
goes to
Yeah, so-
everybody. Yeah.
So if you want to go.
Because then people in the community could be talking about, like, well, mine said it was going to public safety.
Yeah. Yeah, so it should be one or the other, yeah. All right. I will go with the,
You want to go with essential city service, or essential services?
if you want to say like public safety. So an example.
Are you okay with that, Mayor Pro Tem?
You know, whatever you guys want to do is fine. I think that it's a long survey, and we'll see if people get down to number 24. And I think it skews it, but you know what? If we have a skewed survey, we have a skewed survey. And so be it, you know? That's why I'm taking out, I'm glad that we agree to take out terms like reducing greenhouse gas emissions, because I think that skews the survey, you know? Oh, I like to reduce greenhouse gases. So I'll go with, whatever. What's the choice now? Just public
Councilmember
safety.
Sylvester, say what you said again.
I said that could increase revenues that go towards essential city services like public safety.
That works for me.
All right, let's do that.
All right.
That
We have a
works.
consensus? We have a consensus?
With no promises.
Awesome.
In brackets.
All right.
In parentheses.
All right. I hate to even ask this, but are there any further comments before I call for a vote? All right.
Did staff and our consultant, you got everything?
Got everything?
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. So I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation with the feedback from the council. Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Sylvester so moves.
All right, and do I have a second?
Councilmember Klein Lopez, whatever you guys call me these days, seconds.
Awesome. All right. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Awesome. Okay, we're on our last discussion item, number 11, discussion of the Ladyface Greenway project, final aesthetic, character, and authorization to seek bids. I will now defer to the Director of Public Works, City Engineer Jessica Forte, for the staff presentation.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Forte had a family emergency
Oh,
she needed
sorry.
attended to this evening, so Herman Rabau is going to fill in for her this
Awesome.
evening.
Thank you very much.
Well, good evening, or should I say good night at this point, Mayor Anstead and members of the City Council. I'm pleased to present the final aesthetic plan for the Ladyface Greenway project with the request for the authorization to seek bids for construction. This slide gives you a quick overview of our presentation. We will provide a proposed final aesthetic design plan for the project, or show it, highlight some of the Greenway aesthetics, yet functional features, the project's progress to construction, and recommendations for the projects tonight. There are 2 actions: provide approval on the final aesthetic design plan and to give us authorization to seek bids for Ladyface Greenway project. The feedback we received on the overall style at the July City Council meeting have been incorporated into the project's final aesthetic design, and I'm ready to show what the final aesthetic design plan is tonight. Here we have a bird's eye view of the project's aesthetic layout. On either side of the greenway, we have decorative flagstone entrances at Cornell and at the Wizen Market driveway. We also show, with all the nice colors, the green, abundant native landscaping throughout the greenway, which complements the existing oaks that are along the south side of the greenway along Agoura Road. The natural colored pathways that include footbridges as features over bioswales. And the next few slides, I'm going to give you an illustrative view as if we're walking through the Greenway as you start from Cornell heading east to the Wizen driveway. Here we are at Cornell Road and we entered the Greenway. This slide shows entrances for both the equestrian and pedestrian pathways that flank either side. As you can see on the left side, you have the equestrian, and on the right side, you have the pedestrian. And you'll notice, I want to point out, the pedestrians enter where there exists a wonderful, beautiful existing oak tree on the corner of Agoura and Cornell. In the middle there, it shows an elevated plaza behind a decorative ledger stone wall and a wood trellis that emphasizes that this is the entrance. Walking further east, we are now walking next to Agoura Antique Mall, which would be on the left side of the slide. This illustration highlights bioswales on either side of the Greenway, decorative raised planter that is in the middle there. It also doubles as a seating area and a planting opportunity, which we show here, a redbud, western redbud, that will provide shade. I would like to take a moment to make note that the design of the project started before some of the recent fire department requirements for high severity fire zones. We do have a meeting being scheduled for next week to discuss the project's landscaping, anticipate if there are any minor adjustment to the tree locations that you show on the left side, maybe moving further in. You can see that there already is some spacing there, but will not impact construction costs or any of the feel that you see and we show here on this slide. Okay, we're going to keep walking east along the Greenway, and now we're nearing the center. Here, this illustration highlights in the center there one of the 5 to 6 locations that we've identified for art in public places. It is a little stand that is decorative with the ledger stone as well, but it can be removed depending on the type of art we select when we undergo the call for projects, which we anticipate starting next year. I do want to make note of the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District's Cornell Pump Station that you see on the right side there. I'm pleased to share that with discussions with the district and negotiations, the district has a project to upgrade their pump station, but they will include aesthetic improvements to the building there that will coordinate with the AVSP, our Greenway, as well as the Wizen Market. Okay, now we're walking a little further east and approximately where Basta is located. This illustration shows the one location where the grades between the Wizen property and our project call for a short stairway made distinct with a trellis there. It's on the left-hand side under the tree. I'd also like to point out that there are bermed areas you'll see with the big sycamore. It's mounding. It provides additional areas for more landscaping as well as an undulated feel as you walk through the Greenway rather than an airport strip. And our last illustration here gives us the view as we exit the Greenway at the Wizen Market driveway. Highlighted again here are the equestrian and pedestrian pathways on either side, as well as another elevated plaza behind a decorative ledger stone wall. And it's hard to see, but it is behind the existing Wizen sign that's there. The next few slides, I want to highlight features that are functional but complete the overall character of the Greenway. I will note physical samples of the materials and colors on storyboards are also available for public viewing in the City Hall. This slide provides the robust landscaping palette that we have for the Greenway. It consists of hyperlocal vegetation and includes butterfly-specific plants that provide support of butterflies and other pollinators. It's hard to see, but they're designated with a little asterisk. A large component of the Greenway are the water treatment areas that will capture and treat over 1,100 cubic feet of water. These areas consist of bioswales, vegetated filter strips, and modular wetlands. And this is for the capture of stormwater. The Greenway is also an active transportation project. We are providing bicycle support facilities throughout the park. There are 4 bicycle parking locations that are evenly spaced throughout the Greenway. 1 bicycle repair station that will be located closer to Cornell Road, an equestrian hitching post, as well as 2 drinking fountains with a push-button bottle fill station that human residents could use, as well as humans with their canine friends and equine friends. And what Greenway is not complete without seating areas. And I want to mention that the photos, I'm sorry, I should pause. The photos here are the amenities that have been selected. So on this one, again, these are the amenities. We have picnic tables that are located in 6 locations spread out through the Greenway, as well as benches and waste receptacles, and they will be waste receptacles for landfill, recyclables, and compostables. And last, we have lighting. After review of the AVSP and the planning principles used by the CAG, staff is recommending final selection of the lighting be consistent with the existing lighting in the AVSP area. The light here shown is on Agoura Road, just west of the Greenway, the proposed Greenway. For this project, we are recommending, again, a pole with a single fixture that would be located at the entrances on either end and midway. We're also recommending pathway lighting similar in style with an AVSP fixture, but lower to the ground. The photo that's next to the AVSP lighting is to give you kind of an idea of how high this would be, but it's not the type we would use. Again, it will be similar in fixture as the one that we have on Agoura Road. I do also want to say that the lumens and the softness of the lighting will be designed to the modifications recently done to the lights on Agoura Road, making them softer, and all will be downcasted. Now, at least for my exciting part, where are we going to construction? We are busy doing a constructability review of the design plans. We expect to complete that by mid-November, which is next week. We're anticipating I've been reviewing what's been coming out of the constructability review, and the team is anticipating the month of December to finalize the entire bid package, putting all the elements together. And in January, advertising for bids and awarding a construction contract in February with a groundbreaking in March. Just a few short months away. And with that, we get to our recommendations. Staff respectively recommends the City Council provide approval of the final aesthetic plan that's been presented here tonight on Ladyface Greenway project, and to authorize staff to seek bids for the Ladyface Greenway project. That concludes my presentation for tonight, and I'm happy to take any questions and comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation. Before we move on to public comment, does any council member have questions of staff?
I have a quick question, and I apologize I haven't asked this earlier. So when we're sourcing our plants, I don't know if this is feasible, but it would be interesting to see if there's any partnership for some of the maybe plants with the Santa Monica Mountains Fund that has the nursery off Las Virgenes. And those are like hyper locally sourced. So that could be interesting for some of the natives. Of course, not all or all the plants, but I should have mentioned that to you before, but I just want to make that comment. And otherwise, it looks great.
I appreciate that comment, Councilmember Wolf. I have been in constant conversation with Rock, who works with the Wildlife Corridor, about that. There's no promises, but we've shown some interest in being able to do that, but there's no promises on that.
Fantastic. And I apologize, it wasn't a comment, it was a question.
Any other questions from city council members? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
2 questions, just, I mean, I know this well, but I still have questions. You mentioned something about a western redbud for shade. And I know this won't change the cost, but you may need, a western redbud is not going to shade an area. They're beautiful trees, they're native, they're great, there's nothing wrong with them. But if you were putting one in a spot in hopes that it would shade the area, it could take, I don't know that it would ever get large enough. I mean, I don't know all western redbuds, but we have some on Agoura Road. They're not really big trees, and they don't really shade, and they lose their leaves, and so you might just want to rethink that one and see if there's something else that might be better suited for for wherever that shade area is. And then the other thing is, could you go back to the lighting for 1 minute? I just want to make sure that I understood it.
Just one light, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so when you say it's going to be like the lights on Agoura Road, which I know is the CAG recommendation, and I'm totally good with, you're talking about that light, right? Not the tall lights on Agoura Road. Because there's 2 different kinds of lights on Agoura Road. That's the one in the village, and then there's the ones that are west of Canaan. And I've always thought that we were talking about the one that's in the village, but it would be a single pole.
That is correct. The one that's there is, you're right, there are 2 different lights on Agoura Road, but the one that we are referencing is the one that's between Canaan and Cornell.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Okay. I will now move to public comments. This section is reserved for public comment. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
Awesome. Does any council member have any further questions or comments before we move in deliberations? All right, we'll now move into deliberations. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber because I know she and I were on the subcommittee, so
I really want to thank all of you because it's my understanding that you came and saw the story, the boards and all of the materials, and so that was quite exciting. They set it up. I don't know if it was still set up for you, but here in the dais. It was lovely. So thank you for doing that. It made it extra special, and I appreciate that you all took the time to come in and check it out beforehand because sometimes it's just better seeing the boards. So thank you for that. I obviously support the project 100%. I appreciate all that Charmaine and Jessica have done, and I think the residents are just going to love it. I think it's really going to be a huge benefit for the residents in our city. And that's all.
Councilmember Sylvester.
I would like to thank Charmaine and Jessica, if she's watching, for setting, as Mayor Pro Tem said, we were able to look at everything, close up, and I'm really excited about it. And I would like to thank the subcommittee because you did an excellent job getting everything organized. So, no, I'm very happy with it. Thank you.
Awesome. Councilmember Wolf.
This is a really exciting project. It's so multi-beneficial with ATP, environmental. I mean, it just checks so many boxes, and I'm so appreciative to the subcommittee and the staff for getting us here. And this is a really exciting time in Agoura Hills, so I can make all the findings.
Awesome. Councilmember Lopez.
So I also wanted to thank you for the tour. I love the tour. It is so important to be able to see it up close and ask questions and see the materials. I know they weren't exact. Some of them weren't exact, but it did make it easier for me to visualize it, which is so exciting. It's going to be our first park on the south side of the freeway. It's a
Not a park.
What's that?
Not a park.
It's not a park. It's a park greenway.
Greenway.
Wow, it's a tough crowd tonight. All right. But I also wanted to tell you, without going into too much detail, that Councilmember Wolf and I just got out of a finance committee meeting where we are trying to figure out how to finance this because, as you know, we have to put up a lot of money up front and then get reimbursed. And so we're working hard on the other side to make this happen. But it's very exciting, and I can't wait to go forward. And we'll be bringing the financing options to you very soon. So ready to proceed. Thank you.
Awesome. And I was on the subcommittee that when we developed it, and I love how it came out. The one thing that I definitely deferred on is to Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber on the colors. And so I didn't have anything to do with the color set on it, but the materials and how it kind of lays out. I love how we put it all together with especially with the bike racks, the water station, the bike station. I mean, we're combining everything into that park, and the picnic tables, and making it really a community gathering spot there. And so it should, I'm looking forward to seeing it actually happen. And so I'm excited about it. So I'm definitely ready to move forward and see this break ground going forward. So are there any other comments before I move forward with the call for a vote? All right. I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Mayor Pro Tem Elise Buckley Weber.
Excellent. And do I have a second? I'll go ahead. Okay, I'll be the second on that. This is Mayor Chris Anstead seconds it. I'll now defer to the clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move into comments. Are there any comments from staff before we move to Senate? Sure. Ramiro Adeva.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, next Thursday, November 16th, where will you be? I'm going to tell you. You're going to be at the Agoura Hills Recreation and Event Center. Why? Because you don't just get one event, you get two events in one. That's right. You're going to have the annual State of the City event and the Mayor's Art Show combined for a whole night of fun. I highly encourage everyone to come on out. This is being brought to you with a high cost of free. That's right, free for everyone, residents, businesses, family, friends. Bring everybody to this event. It promises to be a spectacular time. You're going to have, doors are going to open at 5 p.m. And then the mayor will give his address, and then also an awards presentation. We're going to be presenting, among the awards will be our highly coveted Business of the Year award, which our current podcast actually is highlighting. So go check that out. There'll be food, refreshments, entertainment from local vendors. So if you visit our website, you can RSVP. It's preferred. It's not required, but preferred. So come on out and learn all about your city. Ton of great information, amazing exhibits. It promises to be an experience you won't want to miss. You can come out and meet your amazing council members, the amazing staff that serve you, and just have a great time with your family and friends. So with that, we will see you next Thursday, November 16th, 5 o'clock at the Agoura Hills Rec and Event Center. And I'm out.
Awesome. And also, Ms. Frank.
Thank you. Not to undermine the fabulous State of the City and the Mayor's Art Show, but because it's always a party at the Agoura Hills Recreation and Event Center 2 weeks after the event on the 16th, we are going to be hosting Holidays on the Hill. We are doing a holiday boutique. A Ladyface will be pouring a little bit of beer and wine. There'll be an art show. So that'll be Friday evening, December 1st from 5 to 8 p.m. We're expanding our hours over the weekend. And then all day on Saturday from 11 to 5, Santa will be there. You can get your picture taken with Santa. Kids can drop off their letters to Santa. There'll be a whole children's activity area. The holiday boutique will be there. We've got 20 artisans that will be there. We've got an art show happening now. We've added an art show this year. There's going to be live entertainment throughout the weekend. Friday night's going to be really fun. Like I said, we're expanding those hours. It is free to get in, but there will be a lot for sale once you get in there. So stop by on your way out to dinner and join us for Holidays on the Hill. And you can visit the city's website on the calendar. If you go to February 1st and 2nd, it'll take you directly to all the information that you need to get there. So a lot of exciting things happening up there this coming month. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll now ask for comments from the City Council. Councilmember Wolf.
I'll start us off tonight, and I have kind of a few things I want to comment on. The first one, I want to thank Michelle. You're doing such an awesome job. Thank you for everything you do behind the scenes. Really appreciate it. You do so much for us, and you make these meetings happen. I've seen you running around tonight. I want to start off by acknowledging a huge loss in our community by a dear friend of mine, and he was my elementary school teacher, then he was my middle school tutor, and then he was high school, drive me to summer school together, and a huge member of the community, Brent Cast. He was a veteran, he was a teacher at Agoura High School, he came to every creek cleanup event, he was extremely engaged in everything going on in the city, and he really loved the city. I know that we're going to be doing a little bit of we're honoring him at the State of the City, but this is a really big loss, and it's really devastating for our whole community. So he'll be greatly missed, and I'm sending a lot of love to his family. The next thing I want to comment on is today marks 5 years. And I don't know if any of the other council members are going to mention this, but since the Woolsey fire tore through our community, I was working with the senator at the time, and I remember coming to City Hall and sitting in here with Council Member Buckley Weber and Linda Northrup, and talking with Nate and Greg Ramirez, and said, I don't think it's going to cross the freeway. I think we're going to be okay. But little do we know it would burn 97,000 acres. And we're still kind of living in the shadow of that. And it's hard to believe it's been 5 years. I think we have learned a lot of lessons. And I think that it's a stark reminder of the power of Mother Nature and of this unique region that we live in on the wild-urban interface. And the need to continue to prepare and make sure our residents know how important it is to always be prepared. And I can't believe it's been 5 years. The next thing I want to comment on is the recent incident that happened down the street on Thousand Oaks Boulevard with the loss of life, the tragic loss of life of Paul Kessler in a really complex incident that occurred. And they're still gathering information, but I want Agoura Hills residents to know that we are in contact with law enforcement, places of worship. There will be increased security. I know the city is talking a lot with Lost Hills to ensure that everyone feels safe and protected, no matter where you worship, to ensure that we're doing everything we can, because it's really intense times, and I hope that we can kind of come together as a community. And with that, I also want to thank the council for a robust conversation tonight. I really think it was productive, and I appreciate everyone's input. So with that, closing my comments.
Awesome. Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf, I echo a lot of your sentiments. I also wanted to, recognize the 5th anniversary of the Woolsey fire, and also Borderline, where we lost so many people, young people in our community, so much pain in our community 5 years ago. And the loss of our friend of the city and the schools, Brent Cast, has been weighing on me. And then, of course, the events of October 7th and now in our own community, November 6th, are so heavy. And so it's some really dark times right now. And, I think it's very easy to kind of feel paralyzed and not be able to do anything. And I will invoke the words said to me by our Mayor Pro Tem, Elise Buckley Weber, 2 days after I was elected, and feeling this way after Borderline and the Woolsey fire, where I felt so overwhelmed and so sad. And she said to me, people are looking at you. You need to model the behavior that you want to see in the world. And so that kind of snapped me out of my frozenness and got me moving. And I want to say that to everybody in this community, is that We are models for what we want to see in this world. And I'm so sad that the violence and the anti-Semitism and the division that's going on around the world is happening right here in the Conejo Valley. I saw a video today of what the perpetrator suspected perpetrator was screaming. It was horrific, and this is not what the Conejo Valley should be modeling. We are not, he doesn't speak for the Conejo Valley, and so I just want to say to everyone in this community, I know there are going to be more protests on that corner. They need to be peaceable. They need to be nonviolent. We all have a right to go out there and express our First Amendment, but you know, when that kind of division and violence hits the Conejo Valley, we just can't stand for it. So thank you for your words that day, and I really want to, you know, speak them again 5 years later, because I think we can all learn from them and model the behavior we want to see in this world. We're not going to solve this very complex crisis on the corner of Teal Boulevard and Westlake Boulevard, but we can model what we want to see. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley-Weber.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. I appreciate that. And I still do think it's true. And I know that we've all been at many protests at that corner, and I think it's really important that we all have the right to protest. And that's a perfect intersection to do it, and we've been doing it for decades, and we're going to continue to do that. And so we do need to make sure that all of us keep our tempers and that we're peaceful, because otherwise we're going to stifle protesters in the future. And people are going to be scared to go out there, and they shouldn't be scared to go out there. We need to make sure that it stays peaceful and that people have the right to protest. You know, it is a tough time, and it is, you know, but a lot of, you know, we just kind of keep having to have hope, and it's difficult to, you have to dig pretty deep to find hope. And so I just want to say a couple of things. In case you don't make it to on the 16th, and you don't make it to the bazaar, you can come to the reorganization where there will be very little food. It's free, and it's going to be fantastic, but Ramiro and Amy forgot to tell you about it. So that's December 5th at 6 o'clock. And along those, you know, happier notes is that today we had the senior Thanksgiving lunch. And for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, or an hour, we all put aside everything that was going on in the world, and to see our seniors having a great time. It was absolutely packed. They told me, you know, the food was delicious. Our staff served the food. Our birthday girl actually had to serve food today. We all sang happy birthday to Denise. We danced. We had a live band. And I have to tell you, it was very inspiring for me to see, you know, people who are barely older than me having such a good time. So thank you, Community Services Department. And then I just want to say, take that spirit and go to our own Thanksgiving get-togethers and, you know, try and bring peace and have people model and try and bring some good spirit. It's really easy for some people at the Thanksgiving table to really get into politics and negativity. And so I would ask people in our community to try your very best to just remember, you know, to love each other, because we're lucky we still have each other. So thank you.
I agree with everything that my fellow council members have said this evening, but as an immigrant to this country, I love America, and I'm so proud that we do have freedom of speech. And if we can get out and protest peacefully, we're lucky to be able to do that. So, you know, thank you for your words. But this is still a wonderful country to live in, and I think there's more love here than hate, and I think love will overcome that. And in terms of safety, this past couple of weeks, we had the safety forum that was arranged by Supervisor Lindsay Horvath, that was held at Lindera Canyon Middle School. Very informative. I wish more residents had come to it. And then last Saturday, Assembly Member Jackie Irwin with Chief Smith arranged for a tour right up at the top of Saddle Peak. I went to Bravo 69 Hilo, I think it's called, which is the helicopter pad that was donated by a private individual, Simon T. It's amazing. They've got these huge water tanks up there, and they said that the Chinooks can come in and load up within 90 seconds a full load of water to get. So if anything happens in our area, they can get to it pretty quickly. And the views up there are incredible. And Chief Smith showed us that we could see from Woodland Hills all the way through to Topanga down to PCH. And one scary fact, he said, is it would only take 4 hours if a fire was unchecked to move from Woodland Hills down to the coast. So that goes to show what a good job our firefighters do. And he just kept saying, prepare, prepare, prepare. And it's up. You know, when we don't have to be right next to the fire for our houses to catch fire. So home hardening is so important, not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors. Because if our house is protected, that means the neighbor's house could be saved. So again, to all our residents, we have a home hardening grant available, so I urge you to take advantage of that. And finally, Ramiro, your advertising is working for the state of the city, because I was outed at my physical therapy, because everybody, when I walked in, they said, "We saw your picture." She said, "We didn't know you were a council member." So now, when I go in for physical therapy, they all call me council member. So thank you for that. And just thank you to all the staff for everything that you do. And I'm sorry I had to miss today's luncheon. Thank you.
I appreciate all the comments. I want to end, I guess, on the comments concerning, obviously, the deaths, the 5-year anniversary from the Borderline shooting, and then also the recent death. As many of the council members up here have stated, that we've got to try to bridge our differences and try to come to some common ground. And we kind of did that a little bit today at the dais, and so that was nice to see. To be able to try to come together with some solution that we can all live with. And I think that's something that we need to continue to try to do, because it's not just affecting us, it's affecting our kids and then eventually their kids. And so I always feel like that's where we need to get to, is to be able to try to come together and try to come up with common solutions for issues. Unfortunately, there's statistics out that say that we're becoming a much more polarized country, and we've got to try to bring each other together and be able to sit and have discussions about issues, and people not feel like they have to resort to physical violence. So I just want to encourage everyone out there to try to bridge the gap with others that are, especially during this Thanksgiving, as was mentioned earlier, to try to be able to do that. And on that, the other thing is about trying to talk about a much more positive thing that's going on. Is I think the one thing that, for me personally as mayor, and this is my last meeting leading the meeting until the handover meeting as mayor, that I got out of this last year personally was the interaction with our children in this community. And that's what I think anybody that has a lot of interactions that doesn't normally interact with young children, that interaction makes you realize that there's so much to live for and so much positivity in the world from the children in this world. So 2 things that I can point to that I really enjoyed as mayor was reading to the 2nd graders here in the chamber, and the questions that they asked. And one of the things that I put to them during that question and answer session, they asked me, "How old are you?" And that was like the first question out of their mouth. And so I talked to them about my age, and then I said, "How old are you?" And they said they were 8 or 9. And I said, "Well, when you turn 18, I believe that you can run for city council. So I expect after you turn 18, there's some children in this group that is going to run for city council. So I'm looking forward to hopefully in another 10 to 12 years from now that some of those children will come up to me and say that they remember that moment during that interaction." And so that interaction was just fantastic. And then the other interaction that really also just made me feel great is last night we had the Girl Scouts honor our veterans. And I'm tearing up a little bit just because it's very moving to see these kids that are, these girls that are basically age from probably 5 or 6 to 15 or 16 in high school, and them honoring the veterans that were there at the ceremony, and also seeing them go up and offer bracelets that they made, and I'm wearing one here tonight. And again, that was just very, very touching, and they really cared about the veterans that were there. And the veterans, some of them were parents of the Girl Scouts, and so, or grandparents. There was a couple grandparents that were veterans. And so, again, that just makes you feel fantastic inside. And I want to also mention to honor our veterans this Veterans Day, which is on the 11th, this Saturday. And so if you happen to see a veteran, make sure you say, I appreciate your service, and ask them when they served. All veterans don't like to really talk about, especially the ones that were in war. I mean, I served during wartime, but I wasn't in the battlefield. But individuals that were in battlefield don't like to talk about it. But if you ask them like where they served, and they like to talk about kind of if they served overseas or here, I think that's fantastic. And so I just want to mention that as well, as want to honor our veterans this Veterans Day. But I want to end on a note of I know that things will get better in this country, because I think that the next generation, it always changes. There's always the older generation always worries about the younger generation, but the younger generation always takes care of our country. And we've been around for over 200 years and will continue to be around. And so I have that faith that we'll be able to bridge our differences. So I want to end on that positive note, on that great note dealing with the kids, and thank all of them for coming, and the teachers and the Girl Scout troops for organizing all those events. And let's continue to really have those events in the future, and I look forward to participating in those going forward. So with that, we'll adjourn tonight's meeting. The regular meeting for November 22nd has been canceled. The adjourned regular City Council reorganization meeting is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Tuesday, December 5th, 2023 in the council chambers of the Civic Center. The last regular City Council meeting of the year will be held on December 13th, 2023. And will the maker of the motion and second to adjourn the meeting in memory of Brent Cast for the adjourned regular City Council meeting at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, December 5th, please state your names. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Brent Cast.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion. Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you very much. Now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. This meeting is now adjourned. Awesome.